This podcast of the Equine Forum is brought to you by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business. It all begins in 15 seconds right after this word from our podcast sponsor.
The University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business is now offering a graduate certificate, which can be completed in 15 or 30 weeks and be done as a standalone or used as 20% of your MBA. Classes at both the undergraduate and graduate level are forming now for August.
From the rail to your radio, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Here comes Dynamic One, here comes Scalding, Superstock up the rail, and Proxy, 1 furlong to go. Dynamic One's in front. Dynamic One comes away with the lead. Scalding second, American Revolution trying to hold third, won't do it. It's Dynamic One. Dynamic One won it.
A 16th to go, and it's defunded a length. Paroli game as ever on the outside, but defunded is too strong, and he takes them all the way in the Hollywood Gold Cup, and Bob Baffert stands alone as the winningest trainer in Hollywood Gold Cup history.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Blake gets the lead. Zenyatta on the outside, looking at Lucky. Blake, Zenyatta is flying. Blake trying to hold on. Blake and Zenyatta.
And here comes the filly, Moira, and she's exploding down the outside, and in the blink of an eye has raced to the front, and it's Moira out in the lead 2 lengths, racing home his Hall of Dreams down the outside. But the mighty filly has devastated them, and the 163rd Queen's Plate is a big win for Moira.
Now here's Mike Penna.
Good morning once again, everyone. It is post time for the show that launched a network, the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires, right here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, ready to roll with you for the next 3 hours, right up until 11 a.m. Eastern, here on Sirius 216, XM 204, affiliates in Lexington, Louisville, and across the country. And yeah, streaming worldwide and podcast on our website, horseracingradio.net, or wherever you are accessing your podcasts. 153 days, 4 hours, 26 minutes, and 24 seconds until the Breeders' Cup returns to Santa Anita. That's November 3rd and 4th. This past Monday, we watched Exalted earn an automatic bid to the Breeders' Cup Mile. That race taking place on November 4th, and he did it with an impressive win in the Shoemaker Mile. That began a series of 41 Breeders' Cup win-in-year-in races throughout North America. 3 more, the Jaipur, Ogden Phipps, and Met Mile, will be part of next Saturday's Belmont Stakes program in Elmont, New York. And we are 4 weeks away from the first win-in-year-in for the Classic Division, the Stephen Foster, which was going to take place at Churchill Downs. Now, looks like that race is going to be run at Ellis Park. I'll tell you more about that in just a little bit. This afternoon, we're going to get a look at some of those horses that are hoping to be in the starting gate for the Stephen Foster and eventually for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Six stakes races. 5 of them are graded. Highlight today's Stephen Foster preview card at Churchill. The Grade 3 Blame, named in honor of the 2010 Stephen Foster and Classic winner, has attracted a field of 8, and Rattle and Roll has been made the 2-1 morning line favorite for trainer Ken McPeak after rattling off, yeah, the pun completely intended there, rattling off consecutive Grade 3 wins in the Ben Ally and the Pimlico Special. Blame's trainer, Al Stahl Jr., is back with last year's Ohio Derby winner, Masca Parade, and trainer Brendan Walsh hopes that the move to the dirt will revitalize his Arlington Million winner from a year ago, Santine, who has failed to hit the board in 4 tries since that big win last August. But the storyline that really intrigues me is that of 6-year-old Bango, who is in search of a 3rd consecutive win in the ungraded stake, the only ungraded stake among the 6 on today's card. That's the Aristides. And it is a salty race. Last year, Bango joined Alsvid and Bet on Sunshine as the only horses to have won the Aristides in consecutive years. He can become the only horse to win the race 3 times later today. But that's not the only history Bango will make if he can find a way to get a victory. A win in his 31st lifetime start this afternoon will be his 11th beneath the TwinSpires. That will equal the mark of Reddy's Rocket for most wins all time at Churchill Downs. Reddy's Rocket accomplished that feat in his 74th lifetime start. That was the final race of his career. And unlike Bango, Reddy's Rocket never won a stakes race. His wins came in claiming races and starter allowance events. But that certainly doesn't diminish his accomplishment and make it any less significant in any way. I'm going to be joined by Bango's trainer, Greg Foley. I'll welcome him to the show coming up at 9:40 to discuss his attempt to make history on a couple of levels this afternoon and share his thoughts on the news which broke late yesterday that beginning next Saturday, June 10th, Churchill Downs is going to shift the remainder of their meet to Ellis Park as they continue to work to find out what's caused the 12 equine fatalities the past couple of months. And unfortunately, that news is simply a continuation of the less than positive news that's been coming out of Churchill Downs the past several weeks. The historic racetrack has been on red alert, and this past week, new safety protocols were introduced in an attempt to rectify the issues while studies continue to be conducted in search of the answers. And it's frustrating for all of us on the outside looking in, and it certainly has to be frustrating for those on the front lines, including Dr. Will Farmer, who serves as the Equine Medical Director for Churchill Downs Incorporated. Will is going to be with me in just a few minutes at 8:15 Eastern to discuss the latest developments and fill you in on what those new safety protocols that have been put in place, what those include. Looking forward to that visit coming up at 8:15. At Woodbine, Canadian Horse of the Year Moira makes her 4-year-old debut in this afternoon's Grade 3 Bell Mahone Stakes. Owner Sol Kumin hopes to keep his hot hand going after winning the Preakness with National Treasure a couple of weeks ago. Sol's involved with the ownership of Moira as well, and Sol's going to be with me here at 8:35. Hour 2 of the show begins at 9 o'clock Eastern, and it begins with trainer George Weaver, who will be here to look ahead to his pair of very talented juveniles preparing to make their pilgrimage across the pond to Royal Ascot. He has No Name Mets, owned by Alex Bregman, two-time World Series winner, third baseman for the Houston Astros. No Name Mets is pointing for the Grade 2 Norfolk on June 22nd, and he has Crimson Advocate, his 2-year-old filly, pointing for the Grade 2 Queen Mary on June 21st. Both of those winning qualifiers for Royal Ascot at Gulfstream Park. You're also going to hear from Tom Durkin, the longtime announcer who retired in 2014, but he's going to be back in the booth at Belmont next Saturday to call the Test of the Champion for Fox Sports. Tom took time to visit with fellow announcer Bobby Newman on our Betting with Bobby show, and you're going to hear that conversation coming up in hour 2 at 9:20. James Scully going to be with me at 10 Eastern to provide you with this week's TwinSpires Triple Play. Kurt Becker will take you on his weekly Stroll Through Racing History at 10:20. And Dale and Tim will be with me for I Ask, They Answer to wrap up the show at 10:30 Eastern. And plenty of things to get into with Dale and Tim. So stay tuned for that in the final segment of today's show. Poll question: which of today's graded stakes is most likely to produce a Breeders' Cup winner? I told you that the blame at Churchill is the local prep race for the Stephen Foster. The first win you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic division. So along those lines, which of today's graded stakes is most likely to produce a Breeders' Cup winner? The blame at Churchill, the Pennine Ridge at Belmont, which has a couple of very, very talented runners. The Summertime Oaks, no lack of talent there, out at Santa Anita, and the Royal North at Woodbine. Which of those four most likely to give us a Breeders' Cup winner? There's a lot of ways to go. I'm going to be very curious to see how you view those 4 races later today, and which has the best chance to give us a Breeders' Cup winner in early November. All right, so Dr. Will Farmer kicks everything off at 8:15. Sol Kumin, 8:35. George Weaver at 9. 9:20 is Tom Durkin with Bobby Newman. 9:40, trainer Greg Foley. 10 o'clock, James Scully with the TwinSpires Triple Play. Kurt Becker, Stroll Through Racing History at 10:20. And at 10:30, I Ask, They Answer with Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
When it's time to paint the fences and barns, think Farm Paint. At Farm Paint, you get the industry's best coatings and paints factory direct at low, low prices. Farm Paint is your source for quality paints, roof coatings, dustless arena footings, and more. You can purchase online or drop into a Farm Paint store near you with locations in heart of Bluegrass Country at 700 Phillips Lane in Lexington, Kentucky, Columbus, Ohio, and Sandusky, Ohio. Buy factory direct and save at farmpaint.com. That's farmpaint.com.
Iowa breds race for big purses this meet at Prairie Meadows. 13 Iowa bred stakes races worth $1.15 million highlight the schedule, beginning June 2nd with the Bob Bryant for 3-year-old Iowa bred fillies worth $75,000, followed by the $75,000 Grays Lake Stakes for 3-year-old Iowa bred colts and geldings on June 3rd. Purses for Iowa bred maiden special weight races are more than $43,000, and Iowa bred overnight handicaps more than $50,000. Iowa breds race for big purses at Prairie Meadows. Learn more at iowathoroughbred.com.
There are plenty of thrills at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet, with live racing Friday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy the Summit of Speed, the Florida Sire Stakes Series, and a whole lot more. Watch the action from our Trackside Carousel Club, our Feast in 10 Palms restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, reservations, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Here with Joe Brown Nicholson of Nicholson Insurance Agency. Joe, what would be a common misunderstanding between an insured and the insurance company?
Mike, one issue is a policy condition that requires notification when an insured animal becomes sick or injured.
Do you mean in life-threatening situations?
Not just then, but if a veterinarian is called in for treatment other than routine care. Take, for example, if a yearling colt gets his foreleg caught in a fence and tears the skin. The coat is stitched up and everything seems fine, but later the coat develops a systemic infection. Then there's a serious situation that the company knows nothing about.
So the company needs to know, even if it's not a life-threatening situation.
That's right. It's a policy condition. The company has a stake in the health of the animal because of the existing insurance policy. The company might want to have its own vet examine the horse. In most cases, though, just a call or email is all that is needed.
For all your equine and general insurance needs, including farm owners, liability, homeowners, auto, and more, contact Nicholson Insurance Agency at 859-224-7080. You gotta know Joe.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Off the turn into the stretch, Santine takes the lead right at the top of the stretch and is set down for the drive. Smooth Lake Straight is battling on second toward the rail. 1 furlong to go. Santine digs in, opens up by 2. Smooth Lake Straight can't go with him. The rest with too much to do to catch Santine, the million winner. 2 lengths in the end. Smooth Lake Straight ran well, settles for second. Farther to back, Sacred Life or Set Piece.
Churchill announcer Travis Stone with the call of the Arlington Million last August at Churchill Downs, and Santine a winner that day. He's 0 for 4 cents, but he moves to the dirt this afternoon in the Grade 3 Blame, hoping that will revitalize him and get him back on the winning track. That is a very interesting race. I told you Rattle and Roll, the 2-1 morning line favorite for trainer Ken McPeak, but I think there's a few different ways you can go in there if you want to try and beat the favorite, and we'll talk more about that race later in the program. But Santine, one of the horses to consider in that 1 1/8 test, the local prep race for the Stephen Foster, which now, 1 month from today, is going to be contested at Ellis Park over in western Kentucky because of the fact that Churchill has suspended those racing operations and will move their racing to Ellis Park next Saturday. That announcement coming out late yesterday as all of the experts continue to search for answers as to what's happening with either the racing surface or some of the other things involved. It is multi-layered, and nobody knows that better than Dr. Will Farmer, who is the Equine Medical Director for Churchill Downs Incorporated. He joins me now. Will, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Really excited to talk about this with you because it has been front and center in the headlines for the past couple of months now. Take me through the timeline here as to everything that's happened this week, because there was a lot of news coming out of Churchill Downs.
Yeah, there have been certainly a lot of moving parts over the last 5 to 7 days, and working with both the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission and HISA, all of their teams to try and continue to understand, study, identify anything we possibly can with regards to the current issues that we have been experiencing at Churchill Downs.
Your quote when Churchill sent out the press release regarding the new safety initiatives that are going to be implemented, you said, "We feel a duty to provide the latest information on surgical interventions from an expert who experienced the challenges in California a few years ago." And that refers to the fact that you're leaving no stone unturned, bringing in experts not just locally but from all over the country to try to figure this thing out. Explain some of those different moving parts there that have taken place over the past week.
Yeah, so that quote was in reference to Dr. Ryan Carpenter, who is a equine practitioner at the racetrack in Southern California, as well as a board-certified surgeon, and who kind of went through, and fortunately I was there in 2019 in Santa Anita working for the California Horse Racing Board at the same time, and went through it with him. Obviously, he has continued to be in that environment in Southern California, and they've had some significant changes, and so I thought it would be beneficial for our horsemen, for our veterinarians, to be able to have someone who went through some similar, very different yet similar struggles of what we are experiencing currently, and how they had kind of adapted, learned what they've learned from that going forward, especially when it comes to catastrophic injury repair and approach.
What are some of the specific things, Doc, that you can take away from that experience at Santa Anita years ago that you can apply to this situation now at Churchill Downs to help you figure out what's going on?
So I think we learned a lot about the depth and the importance of our necropsy reviews and mortality reviews. That really kind of strengthened that portion. And it's something that, unfortunately, it's not a fun thing. It's not anything that anybody wants to go back through. This is a very traumatic time whenever a trainer and owner loses a horse, and to kind of have to sit back down and just kind of look at it from a 30,000-foot view and try to put all these pieces back together to try to create a storyline. I think that was a very big lesson learned. I also think, as has begun back in 2010 when Churchill first, and several other tracks, not just Churchill, but there were a few other tracks back in 2010, the level of testing and understanding for our racetrack surfaces and the importance of the consistency. I mean, every horseman knows that consistency is important, but the science that has continued to develop behind that, it just strengthened that.
In the beginning of the program, as I was opening the show, I used the word frustrating to describe the feelings I think many people are feeling when they see what's happening from the outside looking in. I'm sure you, being on the front lines, are equally as frustrated, maybe even more so, as you try to figure out exactly what's causing all of the fatalities. How challenging has this been for you and for the other professionals who are trying to rectify the situation?
As a veterinarian, our desire in our careers and in our lives is to fix things. We want to help the animals. We want to make things better. And certainly this type of situation is incredibly frustrating, and not just to veterinarians, but to owners and trainers, everyone who is involved in this great sport, because this has been, and as you also said in your opening, this is multi-layered. This is so multifactorial that to try to find the right layers that are impacting what we are currently seeing is incredibly frustrating, but that doesn't mean we stop just because it's frustrating. That's why we're going to continue to, figure out new ways, come up with new approaches, and, because what we have traditionally done, what we have traditionally known has not answered our questions yet. So we have to continue to figure out how to answer those questions.
People will look at this and say, what on earth is going on with the racetrack at Churchill Downs? It is not only about the racetrack. When you talk about the different layers that are involved, kind of outline specifically, Doc, what some of those different layers are that could be contributing to the situation.
Yeah, I think the race surface is always the first to be looked at, because that is what they're on. That's where the injury seemingly occurs, at least, visually when the horse actually goes down. But everything starts so much before that. And many times what we are learning through our necropsy reviews and additional information, especially with the addition of the PET scan that we have here at Churchill Downs, is that these injuries are very subtle and can start weeks before they manifest into a horse actually taking that quote-unquote bad step on the racetrack, because it's not just a singular event. These are multifactorial events that have led to that point in time. And so it's critical that we pause and we look for those important moments.
Have there been any consistencies with the necropsy reports that you've seen from these 12 equine fatalities so far?
So the necropsy reports ultimately at first go back to the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission. So I myself, working for Churchill Downs, I have not received all of that information yet, because they have to finish their review as our first layer of regulation or regulatory body. They have that information first. So can't really speak to all the necropsies. There is definitely a lag in how that information is processed, not because anyone is delaying it. It just is the thoroughness that has to be done, looking at the cellular level, going down to try to help identify stuff. There's processes that do unfortunately just take some time, but then they have to do their review, and then ultimately it will get passed on to us. So it just takes time. And I'm hopeful that we will learn something. I feel pretty confident because of knowing what the injuries were, the types of injuries that we have seen. We're probably not going to find that smoking gun, that aha moment that says this injury is what, or this condition has led to this consistent type of injury, because the injuries we have seen have been widely spread across different locations on the racetrack, different areas of the horse with regards to joints affected, and different limbs, front limbs, back limbs, left and right.
Visiting with Dr. Will Farmer, the Equine Medical Director for Churchill Downs Incorporated. And if you've been following racing news in any form or fashion over the past couple of months, you've been reading about the situation facing Churchill. The move and the decision has been made to move racing to Ellis Park after this weekend. This will be the final weekend of racing at Churchill for the remainder of the meet. That will give officials and experts time to really dig into what's been going on and try to come up with a solution in some way. Doc, I would never ask you to speculate, but what's your gut telling you about what could be going on with some of this situation?
I'm quite honestly, I'm very perplexed, because our horses, especially speaking about horses in Kentucky in the racing environment, are under tremendous veterinary scrutiny. So it's not like someone is, missing something. We have amazing veterinarians, both in our attending veterinarians at the racetracks and other training locations, as well as the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission veterinarians. We have a number of safeguards that have been in place, and that nothing had changed or nothing went away that is now being overlooked. So it's very frustrating, because we have, I would like to say, some of the best veterinary protocols in the country, and sometimes our trainers will argue that those are too stringent, but, we do the best that we can. I think we have a very effective model here to identify at-risk horses. Obviously, we have to do more, because there have been at-risk horses that have not been identified, but we don't know why, because they're not, private veterinarians, the attending veterinarians, the trainers, the regulatory veterinarians have not identified these horses prior to them going onto the racetrack and at this point in time.
I've been reading about some of the new technology that's being, I'll use the word experimented with right now. It's in the very infancy of testing with horses using what they call wearables to kind of maybe predict if a horse is going to have a serious injury going forward, and it could be stopped ahead of time. Tell me a little bit more about that technology that's being reviewed at Churchill.
Yeah, so almost a year ago, the idea came up of trying to develop a scientific study through a university to incorporate some wearable technology called StrideSafe. And we started to think about how could we incorporate that in here at Churchill Downs. And so through the cooperation of both David Lambert, who is CEO of StrideSafe USA, and Dr. Warwick Bailey, who is a well-known researcher and professor at Washington State University, we started to pull together some ideas on how we could do this. And because I feel very strongly, I know others feel very strongly that the high-speed furlong of a horse is something that we have relatively no information on, other than what a trainer sees, a rider feels. And when a horse is traveling at 37 to 42 mile an hour, our human brains and the speed and the fraction of a second that foot is on the ground, our brains are not able to comprehend that. And so if a horse is shortening his stride or changing his stride, it has to be incredibly significant for anyone to see or feel. What we know from our necropsy exams are that there are the pre-existing changes that have been identified so these leads us to that these are accumulative things, not singular event things. And so if that is happening, the sensors, which are measuring in 3 different directions, up, down, left, right, forward, and backwards, at 800 hertz, which gives us 2,400 pieces of data per second. And that doesn't lie. That's not someone's opinion. That is objective data. That we're getting into this space that we really haven't known about. And StrideSafe has been working on this. They have some really, really compelling data. And so we wanted to incorporate that into a study. Thought, what a better place than Churchill Downs to do that. The Kentucky Horse Racing Commission funded this through the Equine Drug and Research Council. It was approved last October, never anticipating we would be in the series of events that we are in over the last 45 days. And that program started here in training. We have a trainer here who is allowed us to use all of his horses in training. So every high-speed work that goes out for him, all his published works have sensors on them. And then every starter since opening night, which was April 29th, has had a sensor placed in the saddle towel alongside the GMAX sensor, which we use for graphics that everybody sees the pictures on the distribution on broadcast. So, very excited to hopefully learn some information. It's been a little frustrating only because this study has very defined parameters. In the current series of events, we're gaining a lot of information in a space that we don't have a lot of information. We have some, but we don't have a lot. And we're really it had defined parameters of what our goals were. And with the current situation, StrideSafe has been all on board, 100% supportive of trying to help us use additional information that we are hopeful to learn to help answer some of the questions about what we're seeing right now. I mean, we were very fortunate to be able to have those sensors, and I'm hopeful that as we're able to process that data, that we will have a new look in a space that we've never had before.
And it all comes back to leaving no stone unturned, and that's exactly what the entire team at Churchill and HISA and the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission, everybody is working to try to rectify this situation. Now, Doc, if you don't mind, walk through a couple of the key, the new safety initiatives, a couple of the key points there, and will those safety initiatives continue to be enforced as racing moves to Ellis Park?
Yes, so at least for the foreseeable future as we move to Ellis Park, the safety initiatives are going to continue. As I had explained to our trainers in our trainers meeting that what we're rolling out, I don't think is ground shattering type. Anything that was overly impressive when it comes to safety restrictions, specifically looking at allowing 4 starts in a rolling 8-week period, and then our poor performance rule, which addresses, a horse that is beaten by 12 or more lengths in 5 consecutive races. I think there's a lot of allowances there so trainers are not forced into any situation that they don't feel comfortable with for their horse. Obviously, I trust them to make the right decisions for where they need to place the horse to make it competitive. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we protect a certain population of horses that might fall into that category. And I actually kind of stole part of that for us here in Kentucky. We have that rule was rolled out in Pennsylvania last year. The poor performance rule was actually rolled out last year by the Pennsylvania Racing Commission. And we had good success with it at Presque Isle, which is another Churchill Downs property. And so I felt like that it worked well there last year. It only made sense to try to bring it here, and let's use it here as well in Kentucky. Our plan is honestly to put that out to all of our properties because I think it hits the low-hanging fruit. This is not a really high technical type of a safety regulation, but it does put some parameters around a very specific group of horses.
Dr. Will Farmer, Equine Medical Director for Churchill Downs Incorporated. Doc, really appreciate the visit this morning. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy 24/7 now, and so I appreciate the visit today. All the best to you and to the team, and let's hope that this gets put in the rearview mirror sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate the time.
All right, Dr. Will Farmer here on Horse Racing Radio Network. As you can tell, everybody working around the clock to try to come up with some answers here, and they're doing everything they possibly can to figure this out. And again, if you're just tuning in, racing going to shift to Ellis Park starting next Saturday. They'll race through the weekend. Stephen Foster preview day today. No changes. Tomorrow, same thing. And then racing next Saturday beginning at Ellis Park for the remainder of the meet, which means that the Stephen Foster and all of those stakes races on that program will be contested at the P-Patch, Ellis Park in Henderson, Kentucky. All right, coming up next, you're going to hear from owner Sol Kumin as he talks about the return of his Canadian Horse of the Year, Moira, who comes back later today at Woodbine, and he'll look back on his big win in the Preakness with National Treasure. That's all ahead after your Legends of the Turf.
This is the story of a thoroughbred who outdid his sire and then some in winning the Belmont Stakes, and in so doing wrapped up racing's Triple Crown in the same year the Boston Red Sox won the American League pennant with the likes of the Splendid Splinter and the Little Professor, Ted Williams, and Dominic DiMaggio, for those of you among the uninitiated. Even most wary, hard-bitten skeptics of this particular thoroughbred had to finally admit that there was nothing in sight to give him a tussle after a relatively easy win in the Belmont Stakes to nail down the final leg of the Triple Crown, only the 7th horse in its revered history to have done so. The Belmont run on Saturday, June 1st of that year, removed the last obstacle to his complete domination of his age division. He won the 12-furlong affair with ease under a supremely confident ride by Warren Mertens, and if there were any doubts or shreds of excuse by his opponents, the arguability of them dissipated like an early morning fog in the glowing sun. This was some kind of racehorse indeed. You know, in racing, nothing surprises. The 3-year-old campaign of the horse nicknamed the Clubfoot Comet was indeed poignantly illustrative of that axiom. He had been accorded not the slightest consideration by the supposedly in-the-knowers in regard to his chances in the Derby. But he cantered off to a virtually uncontested 8th-length score in an eye-popping performance. 1 week later, he'd overcome some bad racing luck and some questionable handling as well, and coming home a winner in a run for the Black-Eyed Susans, the Preakness, by a bare neck. The surprising thing was that his performance in the latter event had been so singularly unimpressive to many, he was regarded only moderately at best as a candidate to culminate his campaign by winning the Belmont. Well, all he did was dispel any last vestiges of dubiousness by racing to a victory that, in its own way, was even more decisive than his Derby score. Old-timers and youthful aficionados alike now realized, sit up and take notice time for this horse. If this great thoroughbred had any shortcoming, it was that aesthetically he was nondescript at best. Many often said the best thing about him was the caliber of his competition. That was as blatantly demeaning as tell a young lady she has as much class as a telephone pole. He never looked pretty. He was blue-collar, lunch-pail, punch-the-clock type who knew what he had to do, and he did it. He wasn't the object of adulation and excitement because of his appearance. No, indeed. That came as a result of his ability to do what he was born to do, run. And run he could. Oh, yes, his competitors were not noteworthy, to be sure, not because they actually were, but rather because he made them look that way by his ability. His sire, Bull Venture, bowed a tendon after the Preakness and could not win the final leg of the Triple Crown, although he was as game as a thoroughbred could be. This horse, with a slight disfigurement in one of his forelegs, had no trouble, other than the aforementioned problems in the Preakness, in nailing down each of racing's jewels of the Triple Crown. His sire, Bull Venture, had won a marvelous derby in closing from 11th place to whip Brevity, and then had barely outlasted Granville to win the Preakness. Although there may not have been any Brevities or Granvilles to challenge our subject for this piece, there can be absolutely no denying he outdid his illustrious sire and joined Sir Barton, Gallant Fox, Omaha, War Admiral, Whirlaway, and Count Fleet as members of a very select company, Triple Crown winners. That marvelous thoroughbred who went on to become an outstanding handicap horse was none other than Assault, affectionately named the Clubfoot Comet.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up, and if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Tenda Equine and Pet Care products have been keeping world-class equine athletes happy and healthy for generations. Keep your equine athlete looking and performing well with Tenda Next Generation Wound and Skin Care Treatment, along with nutritional supplements, leg and muscle care products, salves, hoof care, poultice, topical aids, and grooming products. Visit tendahorse.com today.
The thrill of world-class racing is just beginning at Toronto's Woodbine Racetrack. Kick off the weekend's action now with racing each Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, beginning at 1:05 p.m. Eastern, with Thursday twilight racing being added on May 25th. With more than $64 million in purses this season, you'll enjoy world-class racing and training facilities with the top turf racing in North America over the prestigious E.P. Taylor Turf Course. You won't want to miss racing at Woodbine. For wagering updates, handicapping tips, racing news, and more, visit woodbine.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
And here comes the filly, Moira, and she's exploding down the outside, and in the blink of an eye has raced to the front, and it's Moira out in a lead 2 lengths, racing home his Hall of Dreams down the outside. But the mighty filly has devastated them, and the 163rd Queen's Plate is a big win for Moira. She is stunning, wins 6 lengths.
National Treasure, Blazing Sevens trying to get by their uneven terms, and head-to-head with a furlong left to go. Mage has to quicken up from third. Blazing Sevens, National Treasure fighting back on the inside. Blazing Sevens on the outside. Blazing Sevens, National Treasure. Oh, what a Preakness! It's National Treasure who gets the lead late.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, with you on this Saturday morning. That was Robert Geller and Dave Rodman with the calls, respectively, of Moira and National Treasure. Moira, a huge win in the Queen's Plate last year at Woodbine. National Treasure taking the middle jewel of this year's Triple Crown at Pimlico 2 weeks ago, and now pointed toward the Belmont Stakes, the Test of the Champion, 1.5 miles coming up next Saturday. And looking forward to that race as well. Should be a good one with several horses who skipped the Preakness, returning from the Kentucky Derby. Going to be a great showdown. What a great day of racing, too, with all the Breeders' Cup winning. You're in races. The Met Mile looks like it is going to be loaded. We'll talk about that race. We'll talk about the Belmont and all of the others next Saturday on this very same program. Want to reference back, though, to the story you just heard about Assault, the clubfoot comet. And that was our Legends of the Turf subject for this morning, obviously. Today is World Clubfoot Day. And I couldn't think of a better time to play the story of the clubfoot comet, Assault, who, by the way, wrapped up his Triple Crown sweep June 1st, 1946. So Thursday, the anniversary, the 77-year anniversary of Assault winning the Triple Crown, and that's why we brought you that story this morning. I hope you enjoyed it. So many fantastic moments in racing history. That was certainly one of them. Sol Kumin has had a couple of big moments over the past several months. The Queen's Plate, the Preakness. He's had a lot of big moments in the game, but 2 weeks ago was pretty special. Sol, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, buddy? How's it going?
Man, I'm doing great. I would ask you how you're doing, but I think I know the answer to that question.
Yeah, those good weekends tend to last a couple of weeks, so I'm still feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Are you still kind of on a bit of a high from the Preakness win?
Yeah. It's funny, those Triple Crown races, it's when racing goes mainstream, right? So people that people just end up seeing you standing there on the podium, and you get a lot of congratulations for weeks at a time from people that you didn't expect to hear from. So it's always, it lasts longer because people are happy for you, and it's been obviously a really, really enjoyable last couple of weeks.
Let's rewind the clock 2 weeks ago and put me there with you at Pimlico. You're watching National Treasure in that fantastic stretch battle. Tell me about watching the race and where you were and what was going on at that moment.
Sure. Well, we were, we had a good day, right? We had won the 2 of the 3 stakes before the Preakness. So we were feeling good. And honestly, on those big days, if you can just win one of those good races, that's always the goal, right? You just love to take a picture on a big day with your buddies, and then, anything else you happen to win just happens to be icing on the cake. So I'd say, because we had a couple of wins, I didn't feel a lot of pressure. Sometimes going into those races, you get nervous and feel pressure. We had already had a good day, and so I was feeling pretty good. We were sitting in the grass there, kind of on the infield, by the finish line, and we had a group of us all together. I think we felt like we had a chance to win. I think when Brad Cox's horse scratched, I think it was a day or so before the race. He was going to be some speed, and I thought that once that horse was out of the race, there was a chance it was going to play out the way it played out. Very rarely does a plan that's in your head actually get executed on the track, but we felt like if out of the one hole the horse was able to break and Johnny was able to get the lead and they didn't go too fast, we would have a chance. So all I was thinking about was seeing those first couple of fractions, and if I saw 45 and change, I know we were dead. And if I saw 47, 48, I thought, all right, we have a chance, right? I'm going to get a good scream here at the end, and then you never really know what happens. So we saw those first few fractions. We sort of looked up and said, well, we got a shot. And, the whole way around, I thought, maybe we'd win. And then when I saw Irad coming up to the horse and poking his nose in front, it's amazing how much stuff goes through your head in a short period of time. We had just run second with 2 fills in the Derby, and I thought to myself, oh man, we're going to run second in both these races in 2 weeks. And I thought we were beat. And so that was what was going through my head. And the horse fought back, and Johnny fought back, and then obviously it went from thinking you're beat to nothing but joy for the rest of the day.
Yeah, Blazing Sevens did not make it easy on National Treasure, but as we know, National Treasure prevailed by a head. Did you know you had it won when they hit the wire?
I thought we did. Yeah, I thought we did. And I'm normally not great at judging that, and I'm pretty superstitious, so I'm always I was actually more worried they were going to call a bump or something like that. So until it was official, I was a little bit scared. But once they put the official sign up there, the happiness was able to pour down.
He's going to go to the Belmont next Saturday. Talk about what went into that decision to go ahead and bring him back in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, he bounced out of the race in pretty good condition, and our plan was to go the whole time if the horse was doing well, and he breezed really well last week. He's getting over the track at Belmont well. So we're going to give it a whirl. I mean, I don't know, a mile and a half. We'll see. A lot of it's going to depend on what the pace looks like. I think the field is tough. I think it's probably a tougher field than the Preakness. I'm not going up there expecting to win. That's for sure. I mean, maybe he gets loose in the front a little bit, and maybe they don't go that fast, and he's able to steal it on the front. But you guys have done this a long time. It's hard to win, 3 weeks later, and it's hard to have the same horse win at both those distances. It just rarely is the same horse excel. And there's some really good horses that, you mentioned before that skipped the Preakness that are coming back from the Derby. So I think that he's going to have his hands full, but it's exciting to come into Belmont with a chance. And that's what we probably have is a chance.
I'm always curious, Sol, when you have a big ownership group like you do with National Treasure, you're one piece of the puzzle there. You have a Hall of Fame trainer in Bob Baffert. You have a Hall of Fame jockey in John Velasquez. So when you start talking about the decision as to where the horse is going to run next, and in this case the Belmont Stakes, there are so many moving parts, so many people involved that would have a say in that decision. So how does it work? Does it come up for a vote? Do you sit down with Bob and say, Bob, you have the last say? I mean, how does all this work?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's always going to be Bob's decision, right? I mean, the idea of this group is you're buying dirt colts, you're giving them to a guy who's been, as successful as anybody on the dirt and winning these types of races. So, you have to trust him. I mean, I'm sitting in a hotel room in Baltimore watching my son play lacrosse. Like, Bob is with the horses all day. So what am I going to bring to the table? Bob's going to tell you what to do. When there's close calls, something like this, Tom Ryan, who really put the group together, at the end of the day, he's talking to Bob the most, and then he'll have conversations with, the few of us that are the larger owners in the group, and he'll get our input, and we'll say, hey, look, I think this is a really stupid idea, or listen, I think we should go. I've looked at the numbers, and and whatever it might be, and we're all pretty open to it. I'd say 95% of the time we all agree. Once in a while there'll be situations where we don't. I know you had mentioned the Met Mile earlier. We have a horse in there called Doppelganger that won the Carter, and not every owner thought that horse should have been entered in the Carter. He was the longest shot in the field. So it's funny. Sometimes things like that will happen, and then Tom or Bob, or in this case it was Brittany Russell, will make the executive decision, and you got to trust your trainers, right? I mean, they know more than you do.
I'm glad you brought up Two Phils earlier in the conversation, because I was going to ask you about Two Phils. What's the latest on him?
He is doing really well. I was lucky that the ownership group let us come in for a small piece of the horse. But it's a great group of people, great trainer, great owners, and we're psyched to be part of it. His plan is going to be Ohio Derby. And then from there, we'll see. I mean, I think the hope is Haskell Travers, and hope we have a big summer with him. But they felt like, the Derby took a lot out of him, and, they were just really smart about it. They said, let's wait, and they've given him some time, and he's come back and put on some weight and doing well. And, hopefully the Ohio Derby will be a good spot for him, and then we'll, hopefully hit the Haskell and the Travers.
Talking with owner Sol Kumin on this Saturday morning, live from the lacrosse tournament in Baltimore, Maryland. And you never know where you're going to find Sol Kumin. You're going to be in the winner's circle somewhere. You might be in the winner's circle in Canada later today, at least figuratively anyway. I know you won't be there. But Moira, your horse of the year, Canadian horse of the year, returning for her 4-year-old debut. The Queen's Plate winner from a year ago. She was so brilliant last year, and I know you're excited to get her back in action.
Oh, I love this filly. I mean, this is one of my favorite horses in the stable. I mean, she is she's done some amazing things so far. The Queen's Plate, I had no real experience with the race, and it's just so cool. I mean, Woodbine is an amazing place. They treat the owner so well. It's such a cool race to win with great tradition. So, I can't wait to get her started. I think it's a good spot for her. We obviously have an ambitious schedule to get her racing in some of these big races, in North America this year, assuming that she gets started the right way and she's doing well. I think we I'm not sure if we managed her the exact correct way at the end of the year last year. We had a lot of debates on what to do with her in terms of, do we run in the the Queen Elizabeth versus 3-year-olds, or do we keep her, up in Canada and run against older horses, which would be a little bit, give her a chance to run in the Breeders' Cup. We went that route. I'm not sure if it was the right decision because we kind of rushed her and she ran back quickly, and she ran okay in the Breeders' Cup. But I think this year that same race in the Breeders' Cup will be the goal, and we're going to plan out a path to get there. So I hope she stays healthy. She's a tremendous filly, and I'm really excited to see what's happened with her going from 3 to 4 years old.
Yeah, and she proved she belonged on the big stage with that huge effort in the EP Taylor. And then, as you mentioned, the filly and Mare Turf was her final start of her Horse of the Year campaign last year. But she proved that she's not overmatched with any company.
No, she fits. She fits. And these horses, when they go from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, they change. And so you got to hope that she's continued to improve. Everything that we've heard from Kevin is that she has, and she looks great, and she's ready to roll. So, you always get a little nervous the first time they run, especially off a little bit of a break. But I'm really excited to watch her run. She's a beautiful horse, and she's got a lot of heart, and it's just a cool horse. We're really, really excited to get her campaign started this year.
Saul, when I first started on radio 20 years ago, I started with a local show. The gentleman who would become my mentor and my partner in the network, Pete Coulis, was hosting a show at Keeneland from the racing office every morning. And during the meet, we would welcome different racing people, usually from the farms or handicappers, and they would join us and talk about the races. Well, one of those people was Donato Lani. And Donato was working at Hillendale at the time, and he would join us all of those Saturdays throughout the meet. And now to see Donato having the success he's had on the bloodstock side is just fantastic.
Yeah, Donato is, he's as good as it comes. He's had, as much success or more than anybody in what he does, buying unraced horses, whether they're yearlings, 2-year-olds, weanlings, it doesn't really matter. He's got an absolutely incredible eye. He's also, just an incredible guy. He's honest and works his tail off, and he's a good friend. He's just a great guy to be partnered with. He's become a much bigger part of our whole operation. He obviously buys all the horses for that, Baffert Colt group that we talked about, that, together we've won, the Derby a few times, and the Preakness and the Belmont, and it's been awesome. And obviously this group that we bought Moira with, that we bought a lot more horses in that group this year with him, and he's bought some other ones for us in some other ways. So he's become our main man, and I feel super lucky to be friendly with him and to have him buying my horses. I think he's a rare talent and an incredible person.
Yeah, they say it takes a village, and Sol Kumin has assembled a tremendous team around him, and he's partnered with some of the best people you could partner with in the sport of thoroughbred racing, and he's having this success because of that. Saul, really appreciate the visit. I know you're taking time out of your family time to be with me this morning, so thanks for that. Quick update on the lacrosse. Who's going to win today?
Well, we're down in Annapolis, spending my day at St. Mary's High School. So we flew down from Boston yesterday, and we're at some showcase. So the game started, I think my first game's at 10. They're just training now. So I get a little bit of time. I've got my coffee, and I'm headed back over there in about 30 minutes. I'll be sitting baking in the sun until 4 p.m. So hopefully the middle guy plays well.
Yeah, and enjoy every minute, my friend. Thank you for the time this morning, Saul.
Anytime, buddy. Great to talk to you. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Sol Kumin here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Yeah, what a run he's on right now. And you heard him mention some of the big names, even Doppelganger going to the Met Mile. He's involved with a lot of horses and a lot of good horses, and Sol Kumin, very good for the sport of thoroughbred racing. All right, when I come back, I'll get you ready for hour number 2. It begins with trainer George Weaver. I'll tell you more. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Attention horsemen, the 2023 Claiming Crown is coming to the fairgrounds in New Orleans on Saturday, December 2nd. The 25th Claiming Crown features 8 races totaling $1 million in base purses, headlined by the $200,000 Claiming Crown Jewel at 1 1/8 miles. The deadline to make horses eligible for the Claiming Crown is November 18th, with entries to be taken November 25th. Eligibility request forms and more information is available at claimingcrown.com.
Did you receive a call or message that mentioned Social Security and demanded immediate action? Did the caller know your Social Security number or other personal information and tell you that your Social Security number had been used in connection with the crime? Did you feel worried that your Social Security number might be suspended, your bank account might be frozen or seized, or you could be arrested? That is not the Social Security Administration. Social Security will not threaten you, demand your personal information, or instant payment. Email or text you pictures or documents, or use a real government official's name to gain your trust. Social Security does not accept payments by gift card, prepaid debit card, internet currency, or by mailing cash. Criminals use these forms of payment because they are hard to trace. Do not be fooled. Hang up. Ignore them. Report this criminal activity to the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General at oig.ssa.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Adopt U.S. Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becker. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Want to get the latest HRRN content directly on your computer or mobile device? Then subscribe to our podcast using the Podbean app or Apple Podcasts. Just go to hrrn.podbean.com on your computer and click follow, or download the Podbean app and search HRRN. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and listen to our latest episodes anytime. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our podcasts today. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Off the turn and the stretch drive, the leader, No Name Metz, 1/8 of a mile from home and 2 on top. Second is Mattingly down the center and Blast Furnace. The favorite, no holding the line, not firing, but No Name Metz is clear to the finish. No Name Metz for Alex Bregman to win it, and win it easy in the end. 3.5 clear. At the top of the stretch, it's Crimson Advocate in front. Ocean Mermaid is second. These two working clear of the others. Kiss at the rail. The Myth down the center. Final 1/8 of a mile. Crimson Advocate still finding here. Edwin Gonzalez for George Weaver. Here's a stake sweep for George Weaver. Here's Crimson Advocate in front.
Pete Ayala with the call of those 2 stakes wins for George Weaver. Going to send both of those horses to Royal Ascot after those performances at Gulfstream on May 13th. You're going to hear from George Weaver coming up in just a couple of minutes, 9 o'clock Eastern, to begin hour number 2. Tom Durkin caught up with Bobby Newman on our Betting with Bobby show, and he talked about returning to the announcer's booth at Belmont Park for the first time since 2014, and he'll do that next Saturday as he calls races on national television for Fox Sports. Greg Foley is going to be with me coming up at 9:40 Eastern. The trainer will send out Bango in today's Aristides Stakes at Churchill. That is a loaded. There are 6 stakes races at Churchill today. 5 are graded. That is the lone non-graded stakes, and it is a salty race. And I'm going to talk to Greg about trying to win it for a 3rd consecutive year with Bango and the other history that's on the line if he can pull off a victory in that race later today. Again, that interview, 9:40 Eastern. 10 o'clock, the TwinSpires Triple Play with James Scully. He'll give you 3 races you can keep an eye on later today. Kurt Becker's Stroll Through Racing History comes your way at 10:20. And at 10:30, Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin going to join me as they do every single Saturday, to wrap up the show with I Ask, They Answer. I will ask them questions, they will answer them, and several topics to get into on that show later this morning. Poll question: which of today's graded stakes is most likely to produce a Breeders' Cup winner? And I gave you 4 choices. You have the Blame Stakes at Churchill, the Pennine Ridge at Belmont, the Summertime Oaks at Santa Anita, or the Royal North at Woodbine. And so far, 47% of you saying it's going to be the Pennine Ridge at Belmont that is most likely to give us a Breeders' Cup winner. And that is a good race. There are some very talented runners in that race today, including Charlie Appleby's contender, Charlie Appleby sending a horse over from overseas. So that there are a lot of different ways you can go with this question. I'm surprised that the Summertime Oaks at Santa Anita isn't getting a little more play. The Alice Look for Brad Cox is a horse that could be prominent throughout the rest of the year. 3rd in the Kentucky Oaks, and I think that the Alice Look has a chance to have an impact in some of the big races. Whether she'll be able to compete in the Breeders' Cup in early November remains to be seen. But so far, 47% of you saying it's the Pennine Ridge, 37% saying it is the Blame Stakes. Keep those votes coming. You can do that at HRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, or you can email the show, mike@horseracingradio.net. I'm back with Hour 2 right after a 10-second pause for station identification and your Visit Barbados racing update. This is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Churchill Downs presents 6 stakes races on today's Stephen Foster Day program, with history on the line for the Greg Foley trained Bango in race number 6, the $225,000 Aristides. A 3rd consecutive win in the Aristides would give Bango his 10th win beneath the Twinspires, equaling the record set by Reddy's Rocket in 2012. Canadian Horse of the Year Moira makes her 4-year-old debut in this afternoon's Grade 3 Belle Mahone Stakes at Woodbine. The champion filly faces 8 rivals in the mile and the 16th test and has been made the 2-5 morning line favorite. At Santa Anita, the Alice Look is the 5-2 morning line favorite in the Grade 2 Summertime Oaks. And that's your Visit Barbados racing update brought to you by Barbados Tourism. Learn more at visitbarbados.org.
If you've been waiting to discover that sweet spot where peace of mind meets the time of your life, then it sounds like you've been waiting on Barbados. You've been waiting to experience a meal that makes you book a flight to have it again. You've been waiting for adventure in the sun, from the majesty of horse racing and polo to the thrill of surfing our playful waves. From the moment you set foot on the island, you'll realize Barbados is exactly what you've been waiting for. Visit jetblue.com/Barbados for special vacation packages.
This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Welcome back. Hour 2 of 3, kicking off with trainer George Weaver momentarily. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, happy to have you along for the ride with me this morning. If you missed any portion of the first hour of the program, my conversation with Dr. Will Farmer, the Equine Medical Director at Churchill Downs Incorporated, or Sol Kumin, looking back on his win in the Preakness Stakes with National Treasure and talking about the return of his Canadian Horse of the Year, Moira, as she makes her way back with her 4-year-old debut later this afternoon. If you missed any of those interviews, and there were some wonderful things said, some great things to come out of those conversations, all you have to do is head back to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can listen to the podcast at your leisure. You can also do that on every major podcast platform. Awaiting George Weaver, we are efforting George here this morning, hoping to catch up with him to talk about his 2 juveniles that will be making their way to Royal Ascot. No Name Mets, who won the Royal Palm Juvenile at Gulfstream Park, and Crimson Advocate, who won the Royal Palm Juvenile Fillies. Both of those win in your ins, if you will, for the Royal Ascot meet. And George had choices. After those horses won, he had choices as to which 2-year-old races at Royal Ascot he could point them toward. And he's opted for the 5-furlong Grade 2 Norfolk for No Name Mets, who, by the way, is the son of 2013 Norfolk winner No Nay Never. Crimson Advocate being pointed toward the 5 furlong Queen Mary Stakes. That Grade 2 is going to be renewed on Wednesday, June 21st. That's the day before the Norfolk is going to be contested. So he had options. He chose those 2 spots. And we'll see how he fares in a few weeks. The horses are scheduled to make their way over there on June 13th, and they'll be accompanied by his wife, Cindy. And that's a fantastic story in its own right. Back last July, we didn't even know if, at this point, Cindy would be able to be part of the operation, his business. But she is, and it's a wonderful, wonderful story that needs to be told. And George Weaver is joining me right now. George, good morning, my friend.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing very well. I was just outlining the situation surrounding your 2 horses and the fact that you had options as to which races at Royal Ascot you could run in. You chose the Norfolk for No Name Mets, and you chose the Queen Mary for Crimson Advocate. So talk to me a little bit about those decisions.
Well, both horses are very quick, and it didn't make any sense. They ran 5/8 of them on Gulfstream and handled it very well. I think their speed is an asset, and I didn't really, it seemed like picking a 5/8 mile race was the best option. Now, they do have I think they have a little bit of a lesser stake for the boys than the Norfolk going 5/8 the day before, but this horse is very nice, and there's no reason to aim low with them.
Yeah, the Royal Palm Juvenile was his first career start, and he made it look easy.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I missed that.
The Royal Palm Juvenile for No Name Mets was his very first career start, and he made it look easy in that race.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he's a very, very smart horse, easy horse for a trainer to train, and I didn't really know how good he was at the moment because I only had him for a short while after the sale, but he did everything I asked of him in the morning. I knew he had some speed, and he just went about his business and got the job done.
He is owned by Alex Bregman, who is the 2-time World Series winning third baseman for the Houston Astros. Alex joined me on this show in November of last year, right before Thanksgiving, to talk about his love of racing and where that began. And boy, you talk about a guy that's all in on our sport. Alex Bregman certainly is.
Yeah, no, I met him, I think, roughly a little more than a year ago. And at Gulfstream, he was there. I think they had spring training, and he was down at the races. And he does love the game. Good, great guy to hang out with. A lot of fun, and we're happy to have some horses for him.
I remember him telling me the story about his first horse that ever started, and he was watching it in the clubhouse with his teammates because they were, it was during the season, and they were all huddled around watching it, and he said it was like a big party atmosphere, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's we have that often in this game, the party atmosphere, especially when you win.
That always helps, right?
Yes.
How about Crimson Advocate? Tell me a little bit more about her.
Well, she's got 2 races under her belt, so that in and of itself, experience-wise, is going to bode her well over there. I thought she was really quick, and at Keeneland, she didn't really, she broke. She had speed, but she was kind of laying third and ran a little green. Then we decided to run her in the stake to golf. She showed the speed that I always thought she had, and she as well. But she's always been quick and forward, and those type of horses make good early 2-year-olds.
Walk me through the game plan for getting them ready for Royal Ascot. What do you do from here?
There's a lot of logistics. The flight's on the 13th. It's out of Indianapolis. There's a lot of export hoops to jump through, and so it's just a process. The training the horses part is fairly easy. I mean, Philly's got 2 races in her belt. The Colt's got 1, and he's very smart. We worked them yesterday. They worked at 48 chains together. Looked good. And it's kind of maintaining. They'll work one more time and go over there. And, I feel like they're in tip-top condition.
Have you been to Royal Ascot before, George?
Yes, we went in 2015 with a horse named Cyclogenesis that we ran as a 3-year-old stake going 6 on the grass over there. I think at the time he was undefeated. He was 2 for 2 as a 2-year-old, and he won a stake at Presque Isle off the bench. And he kind of got hot and dirty over there, but he was a heavier horse, and probably wasn't. He wasn't the soundest horse in the world. It was hard to train him as hard as you needed to have him fit, but it just wasn't his day over there. But I enjoyed the trip. I enjoyed the experience, and certainly I was in awe of the atmosphere and the racing scene there at Royal Ascot. It's certainly something to see. And when we left there, I was hoping that maybe I get to go back there sometime with something that had a better chance to win. So here we are.
Yeah, and with 2 horses that maybe have a better chance to win, which is pretty cool. Talking with trainer George Weaver here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. George, the horses will be accompanied when they ship on June 13th by your wife, Cindy. And those words have to sound so good to you, considering where we were back in July of last year after the accident that she had at Saratoga and being in a coma and the brain injury. And there were so many uncertainties. But to have her back as part of the team and knowing that, my goodness, she's ahead of schedule and she can go do these things. How wonderful is that?
Yeah, it's been, it was certainly a tragedy. It was 11 months ago today, and yeah, we're going to Ascot. We're going over on the 19th, and she's actually, I think, the first time back at the barn this morning, just kind of revisiting people. She's not at a place where she could really work per se, like galloping horses and doing some stuff. But we're on our way back there. It's a long process, and she's made great headway, and we just keep looking forward, and she keeps working on herself, getting better and better.
Yeah, I remember following the situation last summer, and I kept reading some of the quotes when people would ask you about it, and there was so much uncertainty. And I know you were remaining positive as you could. But do you feel like Cindy is now ahead of schedule in terms of her rehabilitation?
Yeah, they don't. This brain injury thing, unfortunately, I got to learn about it and live it firsthand, seeing my wife go through it. But it's, for one thing, they really can't tell you for sure how much of a recovery you're going to make. You know what I mean? They look for signs, but it's really kind of an open-ended thing. You just have to go through the process and see what happens. Everybody that's seen her, when they look at her file and realize what bad shape she was initially, they're all amazed that she's made the progress that she has. So, in terms of that, she's way ahead of what they thought would be there. And that being said, there's still, it could be a struggle sometimes for her, but she's maintained a great attitude. She's, like I said, she works hard, and we've been able to get back to some kind of normalcy, and we're just tickled to death.
And you should be. That is certainly welcome news, George. And I know that you and your family and Cindy had so many people in your corner and continue to do so and continue to keep her in their prayers. And, all the best at Royal Ascot. I really appreciate you taking a few minutes. I know you're busy working this morning. Go get it done, and we'll be cheering for you, my friend.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, George Weaver here on HRRN. And, you think back to last July. It was July 3rd when Cindy was galloping a 3-year-old filly by the name of Vinditude, who collapsed on the Oklahoma training track at Saratoga. She had the brain injury. She was in a coma, and there was just no way to gauge how quickly she would get back on her feet and begin to recover from this. And here she is back at the barn this morning for the first time, as you heard George say. She'll make the trip to Royal Ascot with him. It is such a wonderful story within the story here of George Weaver and the horses that he's taking over to that unbelievable race meet. And again, those horses going to compete on June 21st. That is when Crimson Advocate will go in the Queen Mary, and then the day after in the Norfolk we'll see No Nay Mets, owned by Alex Bregman of the Houston Astros. So cool story there. A lot of things to cheer for, and they continue to work really hard with their horses and with the situation facing them personally too. Great story. Another great story is Tom Durkin. who is returning to the announcer's booth next Saturday as part of the Fox Sports television coverage of the Belmont Stakes. This is the first of, I believe, 8 years that Fox has the contract to broadcast the Belmont Stakes. If you recall, it was always on NBC. NBC still has the rights to the Derby and to the Preakness, but Fox now taking over the Belmont Stakes. And Tom has been hired to call the race. It'll be his first time back in the booth since 2014. And you think about the legendary Tom Durkin, who is somebody that I looked up to very much growing up in Western Massachusetts, because obviously New York racing was front and center growing up in Western Mass, and Tom Durkin was the voice that you would hear on the replay shows every single night. And he was the one you would watch at the OTBs, or when you went to the track, it was Tom Durkin's voice for years and years and years that resonated with some of the most iconic calls that we've had in our game. And Tom's last Belmont call was 2014. It was tonalist. You're going to hear that call coming up in just a little bit, actually. It was tonalist. And then he finally decides to step away and retire, and the next year, here comes American Pharoah with the Triple Crown. But you think of all the times that Tom Durkin had the opportunity in that brilliant career to call a Triple Crown winner, and it never happened for him. All the near misses. And he talks about that with Bobby Newman in the conversation you're going to hear in the next segment. He talks about the disappointments that he felt, not for himself necessarily, but for the sport. And it's a really cool conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Greg Foley going to be with me after that at 9:40. Greg, the trainer of Bango, looking to make history at Churchill Downs later this afternoon. 10 o'clock, James Scully will give you 3 races to keep an eye on with the TwinSpires Triple Play. You can go to TwinSpires.com to bet those races later today. Kurt Stroll Through Racing History at 10:20. And at 10:30, I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf rider Tim Wilkin. Don't forget, you still have time to get in on the poll question this morning at HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook. And I'm asking you quite simply, which of today's greatest stakes races is most likely to produce a Breeders' Cup winner? And I gave you 4 choices, with the Blame at Churchill, the Pennine Ridge at Belmont, the Summertime Oaks at Santa Anita, or the Royal North at Woodbine. And it continues to be the Pennine Ridge that is attracting most of the attention from voters. 43% of HRRN Nation saying that it will be the Pennine Ridge as most likely to produce a Breeders' Cup winner in early November at Santa Anita. All right, coming up next, Tom Durkin, Bobby Newman. They sat down and they talked about calling the Belmont Stakes again for Tom Durkin. That'll happen next Saturday. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Racing fans, just 3 weekends remain in our current Hollywood meet at Santa Anita, so come join the fun before closing day on June 18th. And be sure to make plans to be with us for the 40th Annual Breeders' Cup World Championships here at Santa Anita on November 3rd and 4th. Visit breederscup.com and make your reservations now. 3-year-old fillies will be center stage this Saturday in the Grade 2 $200,000 Summertime Oaks, and on Sunday, 3-year-olds go postward in the $100,000 Affirm Stakes. With the NBA Finals upon us, you can take a shot at a $10,000 prize pool in our Santa Anita Pick'em contest, which mixes popular sports props each weekend, and $500 goes to the top winner each day. Fan special online packages are available now for our infield family fun zone. Grab a family 4-pack, which includes 4 hot dogs, 4 sodas or waters, 2 unlimited ride wristbands, 2 pony rides, admission, and more.
Adina Stallions set the gold standard, all #1 in their category. Point of entry, the #1 stallion by black type and greatest stakes winners standing in Canada.
Oh, the classy point of entry would not be denied.
Shaman Ghost, the #1 second crop sire standing in Canada.
It's Sherman Ghost, an overwhelming force in the last 16th of a mile.
Signature Red, the #1 stallion by percentage of black type winners standing in Canada.
Signature Red won his second Highlander in a row.
And Silent Name, the #1 stallion by percentage of black type performers standing in Canada. A list that includes Grade 1 winner Silent Poet.
Silent Poet in front. Admiralty Pier out the ground, but Silent Poet has won the Highlander Stakes.
And don't forget Adina's new sire, American Guru. His first crop are now yearlings of 2023. American Guru, the son of Unbridled Song, whose family have already set their gold standards around the world.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
California Chrome is coming down the center of the racetrack, but it's Tonalist with the narrow lead. California Chrome is there, wicked strong, late bit on the far outside. Commissioner hanging top down toward the rail. Time ticking away in the Triple Crown. Commissioner down inside. Tonalist between horses. California Chrome laboring late. Here's the wire, and it's a photo finish that goes to Tonalist. Tonalist does it. Commissioner was second. Medal count was third.
That's Tom Durkin with a call of the 2014 Belmont Stakes, won by Tonalist, the final time that Tom called the Belmont Stakes in his incredible career. Again, he'll have the chance to do that next Saturday for Fox Sports, and I know that many people are excited to hear Tom on the microphone and hear him back in the booth at Belmont. It should be a tremendous race, a great field lining up for the Belmont Stakes, and it'll be fun to have Tom associated with it again. Tom took time to visit with fellow announcer Bobby Newman on our Betting with Bobby show, which airs every Friday here on the network from 4 to 6 Eastern, and they started the conversation. They eventually got to the Belmont, but they started the conversation looking back on one of Tom's greatest calls, the 1987 Breeders' Cup Classic, and that great showdown between Ferdinand and Ali Sheba.
Love to speak with you about what's going to come up at Belmont in a few weeks, but going back to that and having those two Kentucky Derby winners in the race and, you know, just the miracle finish of those two coming to the line together, are you nervous? Do you have something prepared? What's going through your mind when they're coming down the lane?
Oh, just to keep your eyes on what's happening and stay in the moment and not get carried away and try to maintain, you know, your elocution and, you know, keep your head about you and just try not to get too excited, you know, and when that happens, you lose your ability to be understood.
Well, you certainly sounded like you were very excited, but we all understood what you were saying.
I was excited, yeah, believe me.
In that race. And it was a dream finish, and for those of us that actually bet Ferdinand, it was even good then. It's not like he paid a whole lot to win, but still got the job done with Bill Shoemaker aboard. Great news coming out a week ago.
You know what happened when they crossed the wire? I could, you know, I saw my binoculars on them, and McCarran had some words with Shoemaker, and years later I was asking, "What'd you say?" And he looked over to Shoemaker because you couldn't tell who won. You could not tell who won. They didn't know who won, Shoemaker or McCarran. And so McCarran said to Shoemaker, "You want to save for 10,000?" Which means if the other guy lost the photo, the winning jock would give 10,000 to the other guy, and that's what they did.
Well, it worked out. It still worked out better for Shoemaker, even with the saving for the 10,000, as Ferdinand ended up getting the win in '87. Tom, great news coming out. You are going to be back in the booth for this year's Belmont Stakes. Obviously, we haven't heard you announce races since 2014. What have you been doing, and how did this all come about?
Well, I'll be calling for Fox TV, and this is their first year with, I think, first of 8 years that they now have the Belmont Stakes as part of their programming. What have I been doing for 9 years? I don't know. A lot of golf involved. I did a whole bunch of different things. I taught a class in public speaking, give tours at the National Museum of Racing in Saratoga, where I live. Went back to college, got my degree. I did some community theater acting and, a lot of travel and stuff like that. So stuff that retired people do, I guess. And, but, when COVID came around, that just put an end to everything, like for everybody else. Got to tell you, I got a little bored, to tell you the truth. And then the folks from Fox approached me, and I guess they're looking for a little nostalgia, or maybe a little publicity. I don't know, but I thought about it, and I said, yeah, I need a challenge. I'm looking for a challenge, and so I've been last week I've been going down to Belmont every day and calling races into a tape recorder and trying to relearn how to call a horse race.
Do they at least let you onto the roof to practice calling the races, or do you have to stand at the end of the grandstand and do it?
There's so much room in Belmont, believe me. The press box could probably accommodate 100 people pretty easily. So I've got I've got a little room that they have set aside for stuff like that. So yeah, it's a pretty good vantage point.
Tom, you've called races all over, but of course for many, many years at the tracks in New York. And Belmont Park is a bit of a unique track. It's bigger than any track we have here in this country. What sort of quirks or differences are it calling, preparing to call at Belmont in a 1.5 mile circumference as opposed to maybe calling it Aqueduct or when you called it Gulfstream, places like that?
Well, the horses are just farther away. I mean, a lot farther away. So consequently, they just look smaller through your binoculars, and you can't. You have to look much more carefully to see what jockeys are doing with their hands and their legs, and what the horses are doing with their ears and their strides and stuff. They're just smaller images, and so you just have to pay a lot more attention. The real problem with Belmont Park is the sun late in the day. The track, for reasons I won't get into, faces north. That means when they turn for home, the setting sun is in behind horses, dead behind them at the top of the stretch. And when they turn for home, then they're nothing but shadows. You cannot tell one color from the next. They all look the same. So you really have to be on your toes before they turn for home at Belmont late in the day.
Speaking with track announcer Tom Durkin, who called races for many, many years before retiring in 2014, and he is going to be back in the booth for the Belmont Stakes. Some other stakes as well, right, Tom? Are you calling some of the undercard races?
Yes, I'll be doing 4 of them. The Manhattan, which is I think a 1.8 mile turf. It's a Grade 1. The Grade 1 Met Mile, which is a great race every year. And I don't know what the 4th one will be. It'll either be the Woody Stevens or the Race for Fillies, the Ogden Phipps. So I'm not sure about that one.
Tom, you've had the opportunity to do about everything as far as announcing goes, except call a Triple Crown winner. You've had a few close calls, and in those big races, how hard is it for you to remain neutral and not sound like you're rooting for Smarty Jones or rooting for Real Quiet or these horses that are on the verge of, superstardom?
I've got to tell you, I think it really sounded like I was rooting for him. I mean, when Birdstone beat Smarty Jones, I mean, it was quite palpable from the tone of my voice that it was disappointing, but not just for me. I mean, it was for everybody. And Real Quiet, I didn't know if he won or lost. Nobody did for quite a while. That photo finish was so tight. But, it's part of the deal, I think it was 25 years or something like that with Real Quiet. And, there's a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it frustration or not, but it's when there's a Triple Crown on the line and those horses turn for home at Belmont, that is one of the most intense minutes in sport anywhere. at any time. And, it's bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs in the seventh game of the World Series. That's what it is when they come to the top of the stretch with a Triple Crown on the line at Belmont.
Tom, it's funny, speaking of that real quiet and victory gallop here, former steward Dave Hicks, I think, mentioned several times that even though they're not allowed to root for anyone as stewards, they were very happy that Victory Gallop won the photo with Real Quiet because they would have had to disqualify Real Quiet from that win. And could you imagine the uproar for the stewards taking down a Triple Crown win?
I don't think for 2 seconds they were ever going to disqualify a horse to win the Triple. They can say that till they're blue in the face. From here to the end of time, it's easy to say when the other horse won. It's really easy to say. I don't think they would have taken that horse out in a million years.
Tom,
it wasn't that flat out apparent. There was a little wiggle room there. So I don't think they were going to, it was easy to say afterwards. So,
Tom, I really appreciate you taking the time. We're so much looking forward to hearing you again calling the races on Belmont Stakes Day. Before we let you go, is there a race that stands out to you that when you look back in your career, you say, boy, I really, really enjoyed calling that race?
Oh, gosh. I mean, there was so many, I don't know. You really can't put your finger on one. I mean, I will tell you, the last race I called, I really enjoyed the last one I had to do.
Thank you so much for taking the time, and have a whole lot of fun up at Belmont Park in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Bobby.
All right, there you go. That was Bobby Newman, our track announcer here on the Horse Racing Radio Network, visiting with Tom Durkin, talking about coming back to the booth next Saturday at Belmont. And again, that interview was conducted last week on Betting with Bobby. So if you heard Bobby say, good luck in 2 weeks, that's why, because it was 2 weeks at that point that they were doing the interview. And, should be fun to see Tom back in action, one of the greats of all time, and returning to the booth. It was interesting to hear him say that he's been calling races into a tape recorder to kind of get back into the flow. Somebody with that resume, you would think that you wouldn't have to do that, but he's a pro, and Tom Durkin wants this to be as perfect as it possibly can. And I thought it was cool that he talked about calling other races too. The Met Mile, for example, is going to be just an incredible race. Cody's Wish being pointed for that spot. You heard Sol Kumin in the first hour of the program talking about Doppelganger going there. It is going to be just an absolutely loaded race. And White Abarrio, who has been trained his entire career by Saffie Joseph Jr., Saffie not allowed to run horses at the current time in New York, so the ownership group transferred the horse to trainer Rick Dutrow. I bring that up because Rick Dutrow is going to be my special guest on Trainer Talk presented by Fasig-Tipton next Wednesday at 6 Eastern. You won't want to miss that one. I'll spend a full hour with Rick Dutrow talking about what's been happening with him over the past 10 years. We'll look back on what happened prior to his suspension, and we'll talk about some of the horses that he had the chance to be around as he was making his way through his career, including Big Brown, who won the Derby and the Preakness and came up short in the Belmont Stakes, if you all recall. But Rick Dutrow, my special guest, next Wednesday, 6 to 7 Eastern on Trainer Talk, presented by Fasig-Tipton. That is one show you will not want to miss. All right, coming up next, we'll go back to Churchill Downs. Trainer Greg Foley will join me live from Churchill to talk about Bango, looking for 3 in a row in today's Aristides. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
There are plenty of thrills at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet, with live racing Friday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy the Summit of Speed, the Florida Sire Stakes Series, and a whole lot more. Watch the action from our Trackside Carousel Club, our Feast in 10 Palms restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, reservations, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Undefeated Grade 1 winner Mastery was a multiple graded stakes winner at 2, including victory in the Grade 1 Los Alamitos Cash Call Futurity. On the track, his recent top runners include these star performers.
Surprisingly down the outside, Scottish Star here, surprisingly surging on the outside, surprisingly.
It's Midnight Memories who takes the lead. Midnight Memories, much the best in the Zenyatta.
Mastery, standing at Claiborne Farm.
Aloha West, hailing from two of the fastest families in the breed. Trainer Wayne Catalano said Aloha West might be the best racehorse he'd ever had his hands on.
Here's Aloha West flying down the center of the track. Here's the wire. Oh, it's close. Aloha West may have run down Dr. Shevel in the end.
Aloha West, standing at Mill Ridge, raising and selling racehorses with 36 Grade 1 winners since 2000.
Attention all horse racing enthusiasts, get ready for an exciting event this spring at Pimlico Racecourse. From May 11th to June 4th, witness some of the fastest and most skilled horses compete on the legendary Old Hilltop track. Experience the thrill of live horse racing and be part of history at one of the most iconic race courses in the world. Visit Pimlico.com for more info. That's Pimlico.com. See you at the races.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Miles ahead is stymied down at the rail. Quarter pole. Bango's off the turn in front by 2. Surveillance is set down for the drive-in second. Collaborate is third. Miles ahead. Heart Rhythm is there down toward the inside. Pirate Rick, 1 furlong to go. Bango bounding past the TwinSpires with a 5-length lead. And it will be Bango. Bango looking good. 5 lengths in the end. Miles ahead's up for second. Surveillance was third. Bag Boss fourth.
Travis Stone with the call of the St. Matthews Overnight Stakes at Churchill Downs on May 4th. It was the 9th race of the afternoon. Bango getting the victory that day. It was win number 10 at Churchill Downs for Bango. Later today, he'll look for win number 11. That would be a record equaling win, trying to equal Reddy's Rocket, who has the record of 11, and that occurred for Reddy's Rocket in his 74th lifetime start back in 2012. Today is the 31st lifetime start for Bango, and his trainer Greg Foley is going to be joining us live from Churchill Downs momentarily. As a matter of fact, we have Greg on the line now, so let's not make him wait. Greg, good morning. Appreciate the time.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm excited to see Bango strut his stuff later today. A lot on the line for this horse.
Well, he's going for his next win today. He's going to have to work for it with a 5-horse field, but it's a tough son of a gun.
My goodness. You know, you see, look, there's 6 stakes races on the card today. 4 of them are graded. This is one of 2 non-graded races, and you have to be thinking, all right, it won't be that tough. And you look up and you see Sibelius and Gunite and Mike.
Yeah, Grade 1 winner last time out in a Grade 1 placed horse.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know why that's been that, how in the heck, even the last race, how they're not graded, these sprints. He said they're going to fix that supposedly for next year, but I hope Bango's still running next year to be in them. But,
well, Bango
this ought to be a Grade 2 at the worst today that the race we're in.
Yeah, it's a salty race, and you know Bango can hold his own. He's held his own throughout his entire career. He's 12 for 30 lifetime. 10 of those 12 wins have come at Churchill, and if he can win today, it'll be number 11, which will equal the all-time record of Reddy's Rocket with 11 wins beneath the TwinSpires. How cool would that be, Greg?
It'd be great. You know, it's we've been interviewed a couple of times this week about the same thing, Bango on the record and that. But you know, just think through the years, all the great horses that have run, and since Churchill's been here, and to have a horse that's maybe can tie the record and hopefully break it sometime. It's quite an accomplishment for the horse, and I'm awful proud to have been his trainer.
I've always heard that there are certain horses that have a certain running style or a certain way of moving that, for whatever reason, that it suits Churchill Downs. They get over that surface better. Is that true?
Mike, I don't know. I'm sure there's, like a lot of horses have an affinity to different tracks, and he certainly likes Churchill Downs. That's all I know. It's, his home track, and he's by far most of his races have been here also. But he runs at the fairgrounds a few times in the winter, and he won a stake at Ellis. He ran a nice race there a couple of years ago, and he won a stake at Turfway back, I think, his 3-year-old year on the synthetic. But he's never run like he does at Churchill. Seems like he just different horse here for whatever reason. But he's ready to go today. He's going to have to be to beat these horses. They're going to run down there pretty quick time to win that race today.
Greg, I went back and looked it up. I did a little research here. And not only will Bango equal the record of 11 wins by Reddy's Rocket if he wins today, but he'll be the only horse ever to win the Aristides 3 times. Alsvid won it twice, and Bet on Sunshine won it twice. Both really good sprinters. But Bango could stand alone as the only horse to win it 3 times, and it'd be 3 in a row.
It would be 3 in a row. I didn't know about the record. 3 being a record, but I hope that comes to be today.
So, what's the key to beating Sibelius and Gunite? What's the key for Bango to be able to pull off the victory?
Well, I think if he runs the same race anywhere close to his last race, he's going to be a hard horse to beat today. I don't know if anybody in the country would have beat him that day. And he's just going into this race as good as he was the last one. We're very confident. The race ought to set up. We set on the outside of Gunite and Sibelius. They both speed horses, so we ought to be sitting there, do what we want to do. Got Velasquez, Johnny V on him today. Gaffleon kind of hurt our feelings. He jumped on the other horse, Gunite, who he's been riding him all the time. But again, I was pretty surprised when I found that out, which they told me that early when I asked about going in this race anyway. But anyway, we're lucky enough to get a rider like Johnny V on him, and he's an easy horse to ride. He can run up close. He can set off the pace. That's a good thing about Bango. He doesn't have to be in front. If he happened to be there, he's fine that away. But he can set off the pace. He's come from well off the pace today. But I expect him to be right on those horses' flanks today. Really, sitting right off of them and make one good go at them.
Greg, you lose Tyler Gaffleon, but you get one of the greatest of all time, the Hall of Famer and Johnny V. That's not a bad consolation prize there. No, not at all. He's not a tough horse to ride anyway, but still you get a Hall of Fame rider on his back, and we'll be all right. Greg, I'll shift gears with you for a minute. This has been a trying time for trainers and horsemen at Churchill Downs. You're going to have to move the operation over to Ellis Park starting next Saturday. Just from your perspective, talk about all the changes that are taking place and how you have to deal with all of that.
Well, it's just been, you can't even believe it while it's happening. Nobody likes it. I guess Churchill has had to do something, they're public guys looking over their shoulder every second on them. And I think they had to do it, or they possibly could have suspended racing, period, just between PETA and the HISA people after them all the time. nobody likes it. I mean, it's not a trainer, of course. Back here, you got to pick your horses up and ship them down there to run. We do, as far as I know, we get to stay here and train. That's what I really don't understand about it. We're going to gallop and work over the track, but they won't. We're not going to be racing on it. I don't know really what that accomplishes, but again, Churchill had to do something to get along with all these people and that. I can't really tell you anything wrong with the racetrack. I mean, as far as being dangerous or anything, I'm not afraid to train my horses or race over it. I know they had that cluster of accidents and that early in the meet, which nobody ever likes to see that. And it did have some numbers right there together, but, things happen a lot of times too, and just like a trainer having some horses, 2 or 3 come up with some injuries. I'm not talking about breakdowns or anything like that, but, where you got to stop on them. It happens like that if you've got a number of horses in your barn or all these horses shipping in from all over the country to race here and want to be here to race. And it's just, it just puts I just was sick about it when I heard this yesterday that, along with everybody else that, you can't walk your horses out of your barn and run them here for another month. But things will work out and, get everything straightened back out and hopefully get back to normal.
Yeah.
It's been a rough little trip.
Yeah, and I think everybody is hoping that that's going to be the case, that everything will get back to normal.
I'm sure it will.
Dr. Farmer joined me in the first hour of the program, and he was very candid about, the different layers that are involved with this thing, and he's at a loss, as to what's causing, the issues that we've seen. Nobody really knows, and, everybody's trying to figure this thing out, Greg, but right now there's no answers.
Right. Nobody's come up with, any 1 or 2, anything, any reasons, that, or of course they would have been on top of them. And I, they asked me, people ask me, is something wrong with the track? Is there? And I can't say that. I just, I don't know. There's, again, Churchill's doing what they got to do and is what it is for right now. And we're just going to have to go along with it. Nobody likes it. Nobody's happy about it. But get it done and get back to normal here in September.
Yep. So training will be allowed to continue for the next 4.5 weeks for the remainder of the meet. You'll still be able to train at Churchill and then ship to Ellis Park?
Yeah. I mean, nobody's told me any different. I don't know if there'd be anywhere for all these horses to go. You have Ellis, but stalls have been allotted there for their meet, and I actually have a dozen stalls there that I've had some horses over at Keeneland, my son Alex. We were going to ship those over to Ellis here this week anyway, to be there with that little string of horses and have a couple of stalls to run out of. But the biggest part of those stalls have been allotted, and I don't know where people would go if Churchill said you can't train. I mean, you couldn't stay here and not train. But I don't know where at this late time where it would be a hell of a mess. If they So hopefully that won't happen. But
have you ever had to deal with anything of this magnitude throughout your training career, Greg?
No, I haven't. I've never had, as far as something wrong with a racetrack to have to halt racing. Never. I've been doing this quite a while, 40-some years now, and I've never had this happen. It's, I don't know. It's, again, it could be, who knows? I'm not smart enough to tell you if there's a problem in the track to tell you what it is, how to fix it. I really don't see that. Some minor things maybe could be done to say that that's what's breaking horses down. I don't believe that. I think it's a combination, maybe the racetrack. Nobody wants some of the other people won't like hearing it, but I think that has something to do with it too. They've taken away a lot of our everyday therapeutic drugs that we can't use to race on. I think that's between it and maybe the racetrack. I think that's got something, not saying of it or anything like that, but I think that does have something that plays into the equation also.
Mm-hmm.
Between, you roll it all into one. Just things like that.
Yeah. Well, Greg, everybody's, working to get it figured out. And as you said, Churchill had to do something. This is the move they've decided to make. I know it's going to be a challenge on all of the horsemen over the course of the next 4 weeks, but let's hope that this can be, as I told Dr. Farmer, put into the rearview mirror sooner rather than later. And I know that would be welcome news to everybody, including yourself. But in the meantime, good luck with Bango later today. Let's go equal the record and then deal with everything else after that.
All right, Mike. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Greg Foley here on HRRN. And he does bring up the topic of therapeutic medications, and this is something that the National HBPA has been fighting for months and months and months, saying, okay, listen, you can't take away all the therapeutic stuff that is non-performance enhancing but helps us keep our horses healthy. And this is something that, you hear Greg talk about that. It's something that maybe it's playing into it, maybe it's not. But as Dr. Will Farmer, the Equine Medical Director of Churchill Downs Incorporated, told me in the first segment of the program this morning at 8:15 Eastern, it was a very insightful interview. And Will said this is multi-layered, and maybe that's one of the layers that we're talking about here. There's a lot of things that are going to have to be looked at for our sport as a whole, not just at Churchill Downs. But Churchill is in the spotlight right now, and not for good reasons, and we'll see if this can be figured out. But Greg also saying that he doesn't see anything wrong with the racing surface. He feels as if the surface is fine. He has no problem racing over it, training over it with his horses, and nobody knows for sure. Dr. Farmer told me that in the first hour of the program. If you missed the interview, go back and listen to it, because he was really candid, and he said, I don't know. Nobody knows. But they're working to find a solution now. And, again, racing going to shift to Ellis Park beginning next Saturday. This weekend, racing as usual at Churchill Downs. But after that, racing will shift to Ellis Park for the next 4.5 weeks or so through the remainder of the meet. When I come back, I'll take a look at some historical dates in racing history as they apply to this weekend in thoroughbred racing. And I'll get you ready for hour number 3. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Hey everyone, it's the Baron with this week's North of the Border Report presented by Woodbine Entertainment. Baby No Worries will make her second straight start at Woodbine when the 4-year-old takes on 10 filly and mare rivals in today's $175,000 Grade 2 Royal North, the first turf stakes of the 2023 season. Also, Canadian Horse of the Year Moira, who won a pair of 2022 Sovereign Awards, will make her 4-year-old debut in the $150,000 Grade 3 Belle Mahone Stakes. A bay daughter of Mr. Speaker, trained by Tim Girton, Baby No Worries finished third in the Grade 3 Whimsical Stakes last time out on May 13th. Girton was happy with the effort, especially considering the talents of the winner, Our Flash Drive, whom he described as a special horse. The Chan E. Brooks Stables Miss will now test out the world-renowned E.P. Taylor Turf Course for the first time in what will be her 16th lifetime start. Racing fans will also be treated to the 4-year-old debut of Moira in the Belle Mahone Stakes, in which 9 fillies and mares will travel 1 1/16 miles on the Tapeta. Trained by Kevin Attard for owners X-Men Racing, Madikit Stables, and SF Racing, Moira captured the Fury Stakes in Woodbine Oaks before an impressive 7-length score over males in the $1 million Queen's Plate, in which she shattered Woodbine's 1.25 mile synthetic track record. The Bay filly breezed 5 furlongs on the Tapeta in 101 flat on May 27th. Bred in Ontario by Adina Springs, the Horse of the Year will be ridden by champion rider Kazushi Kimura. The Royal North is scheduled as the 7th race on today's program. The Belle Mahone goes 1 race later. First post, 1:10 p.m. And that's your North of the Border report for this Saturday morning. For more updates and racing information, visit woodbine.com or follow along on both Twitter and Instagram at WoodbineTB.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, Matthew.
There's a reason why Tony's Steaks and Seafood is my favorite restaurant. It's because I want to feel part of the family. Isn't that right, Tony?
That's right. There's a saying on the wall that I truly believe in. There's always room for one more at our table. We just want you to be part of our family.
And believe me, you will be. It's Tony's Steaks and Seafood right across from Triangle Park. Visit them at TonySteaksandSeafood.com.
HRRN is live online. Go to our website at horseracingradio.net to stream all of our broadcasts live or listen to the show archives anytime. Read our blogs, get the latest news, and see our entire broadcast schedule. It's all there at horseracingradio.net. And follow us on Twitter at HRRN and like our page on Facebook. Search Apple Podcasts for HRRN and download our latest shows. HRRN is home to racing's biggest events, and our home on the web is at horseracingradio.net. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Welcome back. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, getting ready for hour number 3. The first 2 hours almost in the books. Got a couple of items to take care of before we transition into hour number 3, including an update of the poll question. I asked you, which of today's graded stakes is most likely to produce a Breeders' Cup winner? The Blame Stakes at Churchill, the Pennine Ridge at Belmont, the Summertime Oaks at Santa Anita, or the Royal North at Woodbine. And the Pennine Ridge has been in the lead from the start. It continues to be in the top spot with 50% of HRRN Nation saying it is the Pennine Ridge most likely to give us a Breeders' Cup winner later this year in early November when the Breeders' Cup returns to Santa Anita in Arcadia, California. And in case you're wondering, we continue to edge ever closer to that date. 153 days, 2 hours, 32 minutes, and 52 seconds away from the Breeders' Cup World Championships. All right, let's take a look at a couple of historical dates in racing history as they apply to this weekend and the days surrounding it. Yesterday was the 80-year anniversary of one of the greatest claims in racing history. It happened June 2nd, 1943, when trainer Hirsch Jacobs claimed 2-year-old Stymie for $1,500. By the end of 1947, Stymie had become the world's leading money-winning thoroughbred with earnings of over $816,000 in 22 stakes victories. How's that for a shrewd claim by Hirsch Jacobs? Today is the 80-year anniversary of the Navy taking over Tanforan Racetrack and using it as a training base in order to further the war effort. That was June 3rd, 1943. And tomorrow, June 4th, 1870, was the date that Ed Brown became the first African-American jockey to win the Belmont Stakes. He did that with Kingfisher. And those are historical dates in racing history as they apply to this weekend in thoroughbred racing. Going to talk about a couple more dates that apply to this weekend with Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin coming up at 10:30 Eastern in this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. I'll get their thoughts on a couple of different topics, many different topics actually, but a couple of historical topics too. We're also going to talk about the subject you heard in the previous segment with trainer Greg Foley, Bango, going for the hat trick in today's Aristides Stakes at Churchill and trying to equal the mark of Reddy's Rocket. 11 wins at Churchill Downs would be an all-time record. Reddy's Rocket set the mark in 2012, and Bango going to try and equal that. I'll talk to Dale and Tim about what words would be appropriate to describe the accomplishment if Bango can find a way to pull it off. And I'm also going to ask them, it seems like many of the experts who are discussing the NBA on talk shows across the country over the past week or 2 weeks have focused on the possibility that LeBron James could decide to retire this year. Not a certainty, but he could decide to retire this year. And I'm going to ask Dale and Tim which jockey and which trainer in the game today would be the equivalent of LeBron James ending his NBA career if they were to decide to hang it up. If they decided today, I'm done, which trainer, which jockey would you look at as being the equivalent of LeBron James wrapping up his NBA career? That's a question I'll throw out there to Dale and Tim too. I think their answers are going to be fun to hear when it comes to that particular question. And there are many more topics coming your way in I Ask the Answer at 10:30 Eastern. If you missed any of the show so far, my conversation with Dr. Will Farmer, the Equine Medical Director for Churchill Downs Incorporated, Sol Kumin, the owner of Preakness winner National Treasure and Queen's Plate winner Moira, George Weaver, the conversation with Tom Durkin and Bobby Newman, or Greg Foley. Head back to the website, horseracingradio.net. You can check out the podcast at your leisure. 2 hours down, 1 to go. Final hour of the program begins with the TwinSpires Triple Play. James Scully will be with me to give you 3 races to keep an eye on later today. 10:20, Kurt Becker takes you on his weekly Stroll Through Racing History. And at 10:30, Dale and Tim with I Ask the Answer. If your local station is leaving us at this time, continue listening to the third hour of the show nationwide on Sirius 216, XM 204, in the Louisville, Kentucky market on ESPN 680, or streaming worldwide at horseracingradio.net. Hour 3 of the Equine Forum is coming up next, right after I pause 10 seconds for station identification. This is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
From the rail to your radio, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Here comes Dynamic One. Here comes Scalding. Superstock up the rail and Proxy. 1 furlong to go. Dynamic One's in front. Dynamic One comes away with the lead. Scalding second. American Revolution trying to hold third. Won't do it. It's Dynamic One. Dynamic One won it.
16th to go, and it's defunded a length. Paroli game as ever on the outside, but defunded is too strong, and he takes them all the way in the Hollywood Gold Cup, and Bob Baffert stands alone as the winningest trainer in Hollywood Gold Cup history.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Blake gets the lead. Zenyatta on the outside, looking at Lucky. Blake, Zenyatta is flying. Blake trying to hold on. Blake and Zenyatta.
And here comes the filly, Moira, and she's exploding down the outside, and in the blink of an eye has raced to the front, and it's Moira out in the lead 2 lengths, racing home his Hall of Dreams down the outside. But the mighty filly has devastated them, and the 163rd Queen's Plate is a big win for Moira.
Now here's Mike Penna.
Welcome back. Hour 3 of the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires. Mike Penna rolling on, and it is a busy day of thoroughbred racing. You have Stephen Foster Preview Day with the Blame Stakes and 6 stakes races on the program at Churchill later this afternoon, and history on the line for Bango in the Aristides, if indeed he can pull off a 3rd consecutive victory in that race. You have Canadian Horse of the Year Moira making her 4-year-old debut north of the border at Woodbine, and plenty of conversation over the course of the first couple of hours regarding those subjects and much, much more. If you missed any portion, you can go back to the website, horseracingradio.net. That's our site. You can go there and you can listen to the podcast of this show at your leisure. And don't forget, you can do that on every major podcast platform as well. And you can follow us on social media. I've been throwing that out there throughout the first 2 hours of the show with our poll question. You can go to @HRRN on Twitter. Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook is your home there. And by the way, on YouTube as well. Just type in Horse Racing Radio Network and you can follow us on YouTube. The TwinSpires Triple Play, James Scully going to join me momentarily to kick off the 3rd hour of the program. 10:20, Kurt Becker takes you on his weekly Stroll Through Racing History. And at 10:30, Dale Roman's Tim Wilkin will answer some of the hottest topics in the sport. We'll discuss a lot of different things in this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer Again. That comes your way in the final segment of today's show at 10:30. But time now for the TwinSpires Triple Play. And again, James Scully doing the honors. You can catch James every Thursday, as many of you do, on the Brisnet.com call-in show with Bobby Newman, and he is one heck of a handicapper, so I'm looking forward to his 3 selections for you here this morning. James, appreciate it, my friend.
Always great to be on with you, Mike. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a great afternoon of horse racing, and excited to talk about some horses.
Well, you have selected the 8th race at Belmont Park. You've selected race 10 and race 11 at Churchill as your 3 races that folks can keep an eye on. They can go to TwinSpires.com to place their wagers any way they like later today. But let's kick it off with the 8th at Belmont Park, which is a state-bred allowance race with a purse of $80,000, mile and a 16th at Big Sandy. That is a 1-turn mile and a 16th, and field of 8 set to go. How'd you see this one?
Well, this race, first off, my top choice in here, number 8, Union Fleet, has several things going for him, that I'll get to momentarily. But first off, I just want to say that this race is a good example, I believe, of a horse. Number 7's Shadow Dragon is 2-1 on the morning line. I think chances are he's going to be lower than that for Belmont. 9-5, 8-5, or maybe even lower if there's any scratches, because he ran second in the Holy Bull earlier this year. Mike, I believe that race is an outlier for Shadow Dragon. He broke his maiden last September in a 6-furlong race, so it was a very slow race, and the pace, the front runner's just a collapse in the stretch, and he basically got up on the far outside, came back with a non-competitive performance going a mile. And that Holy Bull was a race that had a moderate pace up front once again. And the morning line favorite in there, Outlaw Cowboy, or Cyclone. Oh, wait a minute. I got that wrong. Cyclone Mischief.
Yeah,
Cyclone Mischief. Just gave way suddenly going into the far turn. And when he gave away, that threw the race into chaos in a sense. Rocket Cam was a pretty comfortable winner. Second and third were Shadow Dragon and West Coast Cowboy. West Coast Cowboy came back, was like 60 or 70-1 in the Florida Derby and ran terrible. He wouldn't win this race on Saturday at Belmont, and I don't think Shadow Dragon will either. He ran 2 dull performances after that race. This race is going to have a fast pace. There is some speed signed on there. I think contested at the very least. Number 1, Cephalo's Mission, and number 2, 42 Ace are both labeled E8 types for the Brisnet Ultimate Pass Performance run styles. They do their best running on the front end. I think number 4, Hurricane Andrew, Kaz Palace, number 5, and even number 6, Ormston off a wire-to-wire win can push it. And we're going to get some solid, early and middle fractions in this 1 mile and 16th race. Number 8, Union Fleet, has been stalking some soft internal splits in his recent races. Since he's been claimed first off by this trainer McGannon, really it's just turned things around. One thing he did was after he claimed him for $25,000, he immediately stretched him out in distance, Mike. And this 4-year-old gelding likes a route of distance. He's got 3 starts at this mile and a 16th distance with a second and a third. And you can go back to his race in mid-January where he got a really solid pace that day. Really, I thought, ran a good race to win that day, and came back and faced some really solid company in these entry-level open allowance races at Laurel Park. Most of these rivals have been running against New York bred competition. I think his numbers are solid. I thought his last race, a third here at Belmont in an entry-level allowance, from a post number 3, was a very good experience over the track. Good sign to see Manny Franco ride him right back. And I just envision him getting a very favorable trip from that outside post and basically just stalking behind the early leaders, making a run with Franco and proving best in the stretch.
Yeah, Union Fleet 6-1, post position number 8. That's the outside post in that 8th race at Belmont. Maybe even a bit of an advantage there too, James, because breaking from the outside of Shadow Dragon, Manny Franco aboard Union Fleet is going to be able to see what his rival decides to do and adjust accordingly. That might be an advantage too.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You go back to, even like last fall, he ran a race from post 6, a win, and a race from another outside post and ran well. So, he likes to be outside of horses, and I do think that will be an advantage being drawn. outside this field at a 1-turn mile and a 16th with plenty of run to the far turn.
Should be great value in the first leg of this week's TwinSpires triple play from James Scully. James, let's go to Churchill Downs, where you selected race 10, the Blame Stakes, and race number 11, which is a really competitive maiden special weight event going 7/8 of a mile on the main track. But we'll start with that Blame Stakes, this race on Stephen Foster Preview Day that is likely to produce 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 starters in that Stephen Foster. 1 1/8 on the main track. Rattle and Roll going to get a lot of attention from the inside post, 2-1 on the morning line. What do you think? How'd you see it?
Well, I tough task from Rattle and Roll to run these 3 races from April 22nd through June 3rd. Definitely, a deserving favorite off those 2 wins, but has done some traveling. I like number 4, Call Me Fast. And number 4, Call Me Fast, a horse that is, I think, a really up-and-coming 4-year-old gelding. He broke his maiden last October at Keeneland pretty convincingly. Came back on Breeders' Cup Friday undercard and ran second to Marsalis, who's a really nice colt in an allowance that day. He missed the start, broke dead last. And didn't fire in his 3-year-old conclusion. But he came back this year at Oaklawn Park, Mike, and in back-to-back allowances, broke well from the gate and just ran away from his competition on the front end. I thought really 2 sharp performances that earned increasing performance figures by any metric. Really was improving form. In that Essex Stakes, he not only missed the break, but then he got steadied hard, which just threw him completely off course. You can draw a line through that. In that Ben Ali last time, I thought he was going to be the speed. I thought he was going to break running, and I thought that was a really terrific race for Call Me Fast because when the gates opened, he completely stumbled. His feet caught in the ground, and it took him a few strides to get it back under him. And Leperoux was forced into an inside stalking trip, and on the far turn, he is loaded from the start of the far turn to the conclusion of it with nowhere to go between horses. He swings Call Me Fast out in the stretch. He splits rivals. By this point, Rattle and Roll's already gotten the jump on him, but he ran by Pioneer Medina. He was gaining on Rattle and Roll, and I just think he's going to turn the tables on that rival because I think his best races are coming up, and I know he doesn't have to break poorly from the starting gate like he did last time. He gets out of the gate better with Julien Leperoux. He's going to be prominent from the start. One thing about this Blame is there's not a lot of speed signed on, and I look for number 4, Call Me Fast, 6-1 on the morning line to get a favorable trip up close to the lead with Julien Leperoux.
Any concerns, James, about his 0-for-4 record at Churchill Downs?
Well, I think a lot of those races were, early in his career and his last effort. He just really had a troubled trip. I mean, this is obviously a horse that needed, just racing experience. But if you look at those 2 efforts where he was running against Maiden Company, he ran 4th to Pro Occident, who was a nice horse, won an allowance on Thursday night, and then he ran a really good second. So at least he had 2 encouraging efforts last summer, fall, and I think he's just a much better horse at age 4 this year.
Yep, really interesting race. A lot of ways to go, but value with number 4, Call Me Fast, at odds of 6-1 in that Blame Stakes, the 10th at Churchill Downs. The race following it, to wrap it up, the final race on that program. By the way, post time for the Blame, in case you're wondering, 5:26 Eastern, 5:58 Eastern is post time for race 11, 7-furlong maiden event. And I think as I looked at this field, I thought there were plenty of different ways you could go. Of course, it helps when you got 10 rivals in here. But what do you think, James? Who wins this one?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how the betting goes because, you look at this number 1 American Retro. He took a lot of money last time, ran second. This number 2 Mythology, half-sister to Matarea, grade 1 winner, Matarea, tough sprinter. And Little Prankster got bet way down on Derby week and ran a good second to Sweet Azteca, who looked good. But I like number 10, Zylos, and I love the outside draw. I think it's going to benefit this 3-year-old filly. I think this 3-year-old filly is absolutely sitting on go, and she is going to love the stretch back out to 6-7 furlongs. And the real key for her was that she just broke well last time. This filly, I picked her. I was working last summer in August at Churchill Downs that day, and I picked Zeitlos at first asking because I liked her work tab and I liked her win early breeding. She's from these Australian female family that's extremely classy, like Group 1, Group 2 winning, like sprinters. And, and they were on turf, but they were still extremely classy and had thrown like stakes winners. So I thought she had a shot because she was working well, and she broke from the inside post and just took a left turn and ducked the jockey. Her next time out a month later in September, she just didn't get out of the gate well. I thought that was a hangover from that debut, got away slowly, and really ran a good second to Baticata. Baticata, that was her debut that day for Cox. She came back, won an allowance at Fairgrounds by 3.5 lengths at 2-5, and she hasn't been seen since. She's a really nice-looking horse. Last time out of Keeneland, like I mentioned, Zeitlos broke well that day. That was a good second to a really nice horse, I think, Mike. Cilia, that's Tacitus's full sister out of Champion Close Hatches. She ran to her, ran like she was expected to. I mean, but Zeitlos took some money too. But I just think she's going to move forward off of that. I loved her runner-up effort, like I said, at Churchill last year, how she's trained at it. And I think, second start off the shelf for Steve Asmussen. This is a stakes quality filly that I think is only going to move forward, and I like the outside draw with Florent Giroux today.
James, I'm going to put you on the spot. You know my favorite wager in racing. I love trifectas. So give me 2 horses to use underneath Zeitlos that I can put in my trifecta.
Well, I mean, Little Prankster, I like her the best of the short price sources in there. I got some concerns about the 1 and even the 2 breaking in the inside. And I'll mention number 5, Gianna. I don't know, she's probably, may not be good enough to win, but that was a good second first out for Ben Colebrook. His horse has improved the second time out, so she has some appeal underneath. I got the 10 over the 9 and 5.
All right, James Scully with the triple play. Just a recap for you. He'll start with the 8th race at Belmont. He'll go with number 8, Union Fleet, at odds of 6-1. The 10th race at Churchill, the Blame Stakes, number 4, Call Me Fast, at odds of 6-1 is the top pick. And in race 11 at Churchill, number 10, Zeitlos, at odds of 7-2, and you can head over to TwinSpires.com to place your wagers on those races and every race that you're going to bet today. Do it at TwinSpires.com. And James, I know there's always all kinds of special promotions and offers there. Same thing when people go to Brisnet.com. They'll find, in my opinion, the best past performances in the business, but they'll find a lot of other information that's going to help them pick a winner too.
Yeah, absolutely. We have all the handicapping reports. We're going to have a Belmont handicapping package. It's like $20. That's 2 days of Friday, Saturday of PPs and some reports. You get discounts on all the rest of our reports if you sign up for that. So check out Brisnet.com for all your handicapping needs. And TwinSpires, like you mentioned, we've got the money back. Horse finishes second, or bet your horse to win. If it finishes second or third, we'll give you up to $10 back in select races Friday through Sunday at Churchill Downs. So check out that promotion, opt in, and all the rest that we have going on at TwinSpires.
James, appreciate it, my friend. Good luck at the windows this weekend. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much, Mike. You have a great day.
James Scully, TwinSpires triple play. Again, head over to TwinSpires.com to place your wagers on those 3 races and all the races you're going to bet this weekend. When I come back, Kurt Becker takes you on his Stroll Through Racing History. And at 10:30, you know what time it is. Time for Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin. I ask, they answer. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Airdrie Stud is proud to announce the arrival of Grade 1 winning millionaire Happy Saver for the 2023 season. Happy Saver boasts one of the most important female families of the century, as his third dam is Broodmare of the Year Weekend Surprise, dam of the legendary AP Indy. Undefeated in his first 5 starts, Happy Saver capped off his perfect 4-for-4 season with an emphatic victory in the historic Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.
And Happy Saver stays undefeated. He steps up and he wins the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.
Airdrie Studs, Happy Saver. Think about it.
The spring meet returns to Churchill Downs now through July 3rd with 50 stakes races worth over $20 million during the spring meet. Racing doesn't end once Derby week is over, as there is plenty of racing action throughout the meet, with maiden special weight races of $120,000 and allowance races ranging from $127,000 to $148,000. For more racing information and to get your tickets today, visit ChurchillDowns.com. Churchill Downs purses are powered by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund.
This healthy horse tip is brought to you by Kessmark. Ice or cold therapy is no stranger to any serious human athlete before, during, and after training or competition. Using a cold saltwater spa with sea and Epsom salt can help to reduce inflammation and increases circulation, which helps acute and chronic micro-injuries to resolve with regular use. This treatment also aids in keeping horses sound and healthy. Horses love the cold water spa. If a horse has a serious injury, cold therapy won't diminish that injury, but it will help with inflammation and better healing. For more healthy horse tips, visit Kessmark.com or follow them on Twitter at Kessmark_equine. That's KESMARC_equine.
There are plenty of thrills at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet, with live racing Friday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy the Summit of Speed, the Florida Sire Stakes Series, and a whole lot more. Watch the action from our Trackside Carousel Club, our Feast in 10 Palms restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, reservations, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Hello, I'm Kurt Becker. Thanks for joining me as I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. In the world of sport, there's an old saying that no one ever remembers who finished second. For example, we will soon be hearing a great deal about the 50th anniversary of Secretariat's victory in the Belmont Stakes by the astounding margin of 31 lengths. But can you name the horse which finished second that day? His name was Twice a Prince. Foaled on March 11, 1970 at Elmendorf Farm in Lexington, Kentucky, Twice a Prince was a bay colt by Prince John out of Double Zero by Never Say Die. His sire defeated champion Needles in the Garden State Stakes as a juvenile, while his maternal grandsire was an American bred which won the 1954 Epsom Derby. Twice a Prince, which did not race as a 2-year-old, was a homebred for Elmendorf, which at the time was owned by Maxwell Gluck. Described as short and dapper, Gluck had made his fortune as the founder of a chain of dress shops, and he had served as United States ambassador to Ceylon, known today as Sri Lanka, under President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Gluck had owned Elmendorf since 1952. Gluck would choose Johnny Campo to be the trainer of Twice a Prince, but by the time Twice a Prince got to the races as a 3-year-old in 1973, there were other horses racing in the Elmendorf colors which were gaining far more attention. For example, Campo trained Elmendorf homebred Protagonist to an Eclipse Award that season as America's champion juvenile colt. He also conditioned Elmendorf homebred Talking Picture to the Eclipse as champion 2-year-old filly. It was a year of years for Elmendorf Farm, and that meant Twice a Prince would spend the year being overshadowed by his more accomplished stablemates. Still, he had managed a runner-up finish in March in the Grade 2 Fountain of Youth Stakes at Gulfstream Park, and it was enough to convince Campo to give him a shot at the Kentucky Derby. But things would not go well. Twice a Prince finished 12th in the 13-horse field at Churchill Downs that day, some 25 lengths behind Secretariat. The footnotes on the daily racing form chart said that he had showed nothing, and several newspaper reports said that he had ruined the start of the Derby, having balked at entering the gate, eventually unseating jockey Angel Santiago and causing a 5-minute delay. When Campo announced a few weeks later that Twice a Prince would be running in the Belmont Stakes, reporters smirked. The horse had been through no fewer than 5 jockeys. The Derby had been a disaster. He had been absent from the Preakness, and he was 30-1 on the morning line for the Belmont. But Campo moved forward with his plans, and Twice a Prince entered the starting gate without incident this time, at odds of 17-1 for the 105th running of the Belmont Stakes. Riding him that day was Braulio Baeza, a jockey who boasted 3 Belmont victories on his resume. Practically everyone knows the story from there, as Secretariat romped and captured not only the Belmont but also the Triple Crown. And crossing the wire some 31 lengths behind him to take runner-up was Twice a Prince. Twice a Prince would return to Belmont Park in October to finish 3rd against older horses in the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup. But in January of 1974 at Gulfstream Park, he was injured during a morning workout. Corrective surgery took place and appeared to be successful, but a setback occurred, and Twice a Prince died in April at the age of 4. Late in his life, Maxwell Gluck donated $3 million for purposes of building an equine research center. Keeneland Association added a $1 million endowment. And in 1987, some 3 years after Gluck's death, the Maxwell H. Gluck Equine Research Center was opened at the University of Kentucky. And for more than 35 years since then, the center has enabled equine scientists to broaden their research into the health, safety, and well-being of the thoroughbred racehorse. The website for the center declares its mission as one of scientific discovery, education, and dissemination of knowledge for the benefit of the health and well-being of horses. The center also declares itself as the only scientific institute in the United States with nearly all faculty conducting full-time research in equine health and diseases. Perhaps that is the true legacy of Twice a Prince. Not that he ran second to Secretariat in the Belmont by a 31-length margin, but that his untimely passing contributed to the decision by his owner and breeder to leave an endowment for the safety and welfare of the thoroughbred. In the midst of a spring racing season which has renewed calls for greater investments in the health and safety of equine athletes, we remember Twice a Prince. Please join me again next week as I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. For HRRN, I'm Kurt Becker.
And once again, my thanks to Kurt and to Keeneland for making those segments possible each and every week. If you have missed any of Kurt's Stroll Through Racing History segments, all you have to do is head back over to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can check out the special podcast page dedicated to those stories and listen to every single one. There have been some amazing ones. Go back and listen at horseracingradio.net. When I come back, Del Romans, Tim Wilkin, they will be here. It is this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Racing fans, just 3 weekends remain in our current Hollywood meet at Santa Anita, so come join the fun before closing day on June 18th. And be sure to make plans to be with us for the 40th Annual Breeders' Cup World Championships here at Santa Anita on November 3rd and 4th. Visit breederscup.com and make your reservations now. 3-year-old fillies will be center stage this Saturday in the Grade 2 $200,000 Summertime Oaks, and on Sunday, 3-year-olds go postward in the $100,000 Affirm Stakes. With the NBA Finals upon us, you can take a shot at a $10,000 prize pool in our Santa Anita Pick'em contest, which mixes popular sports props each weekend, and $500 goes to the top winner each day. Fan special online packages are available now for our infield family fun zone. Grab a family 4-pack, which includes 4 hot dogs, 4 sodas or waters, 2 unlimited ride wristbands, 2 pony rides, admission, and more.
It's time now to shine the spotlight on the Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week.
Speaker's Corner is under a hand right here, and he's got a 6-length lead as they pass the 16th pole. Speaker's Corner in a dominating performance, winning the quarter, won it by 5.
Speaker's Corner. Wow, the fastest ever by Street Sense, earned a 1:14 buyer with that win in the Grade 1 Carter. Only Flightline has run a better number in the past 3 years. A brilliant effort, which makes Speaker's Corner your Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week. Darley Stallion Street Sense. In 2022, Street Sense was the sire of 12 black type winners. No stallion under 100,000 could top it. He stands for $20,000 live full, and there's still some availability in his 2023 book. Learn more about Street Sense and all the Darley Stallions by visiting darleyamerica.com.
This is I Ask, They Answer on the Equine Forum on HRRN.
Bango's getting into the race now. 5 lengths behind in 5th. They're at the quarter pole. Top Gunner moves up to grab the lead, top of the stretch, and kicks away. Opening up by 2. Long Range Toddy back in second. Jalen Journey. Bango's coming on late. Necker Island up the rail. 16th pole. Top Gunner wanders to the outside. Can Bango sneak through and get it? Yes, he can. Bango. 2.5 lengths in the end. It's tight for second there between Necker Island, Long Range Toddy, Top Gunner as well.
Churchill loving Bango will try to make it 3 in a row in the Aristides at Churchill later today, but we'll tell you why a victory in that race would be just part of the story. Plus, do we have a clear-cut leader in the older horse division, and which jockey and trainer would be the equivalent of LeBron James if they were to decide to retire today? We're going to talk about those topics and much, much more on this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf writer Tim Wilkin. And it's all presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program and the College of Business. And it all starts just 30 seconds from right now.
Learn the business of horses in the world's only accredited equine business program, the University of Louisville Equine Business Program. The University of Louisville has a legacy of excellence educating and developing industry leaders for over 35 years. Classes are taught by industry experts in state-of-the-art facilities located in the heartland of America's equine industry. The University of Louisville Equine Business Program. When it comes to horses, we mean business. For more information, visit business.louisville.edu/equine.
Dale and Tim side by side in the starting gate this morning. Plenty of great topics to talk about. We're even going to have a little fun with a couple of those topics, imagining which horses or which people in the game would be the equivalent of LeBron James if they were to step away. We'll do that in just a minute. But, guys, I want to start with Bango, who is going for the hat trick in today's Aristides Stakes at Churchill Downs. A third consecutive win in that race is really just part of his story. The 6-year-old son of Congrats with a victory would be his 11th win at Churchill. That would equal the all-time record set by Reddy's Rocket in 2012. So I'll ask you guys this. If Bango wins today, Tim Wilkin, what words would be appropriate to describe his accomplishment?
Bango, durable, iron horse, the people's horse at Churchill Downs. The thing that's interesting about Bango's little streak here, oftentimes he was not even the favorite. A couple times he went off at 10-1 or more. And one thing I thought, Mike, was interesting about Bango's little run here, his second win at Churchill, he got crushed by Art Collector by 7.5 lengths. But he was awarded the win when Art Collector tested positive. After a test following the race. So, and that was in 2019. But it's a cool story. It's to see the old guys still being able to do it. And we don't see a lot of the old guys race anymore because face it, the older horses don't race very much anymore. But Bango is he's like a throwback to a different era. and I applaud everything he does, and I hope he keeps going, and keeps winning, and it'll just make his legacy even that much stronger. I mean, the outside of Churchill Downs, people might not know who Bango is, but I'm sure he's got a very strong following of people that come to watch him race when he's at Churchill, and more power to him.
Yeah, Bango's trainer, Greg Foley, is one of my closest friends. We grew up on the backside together. I know he loves that horse, and he's done a masterful job handling him and keeping him around and keeping him at the level where he needs to be. Never really stepped out of the comfort zone and tried to overmatch him or try to do something he wasn't ready to do. And I know it's important to Greg to win this race today and tie the record, and he wants to come back and beat the record. And I hope he gets it done, because you're right. People around Louisville, they know Bango. He's a popular horse here, and he's done everything right, and Greg's just done a great job training him.
Well, Dale, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go, Timmy.
Being a trainer, how tough is it to keep a horse at that level to be able to compete as he gets older? How do you do it?
It's impossible. That's why nobody else has done it. And, I was thinking while you were talking about the horses I've had, I can only think of one that won 12 races in his life, Silver Max. That's a lot of races in today's world. The average racehorse only starts 6 or 7 times. And for Bango just to keep banging out, and at a high level. Reddy's Rocket was a nice horse when he set the record, but he was a claiming horse that was winning starter races. He had him over a barrel every time. Like you said, Bango, it doesn't matter what his race record looked like coming into Kentucky. He's going to run big at Churchill Downs. It doesn't matter who's in there.
And this will be his 31st start. I mean, this is you don't see that anymore. You just don't.
You very rarely see it. He's a special horse, and I know he means a lot to Greg's barn.
When Reddy's Rocket broke the record or set the record back in 2012, that was in his final career start. It was his 74th lifetime start, his 20th win for his career. So you talk about a horse that was hickory. Reddy's Rocket certainly embodies what it means to be hickory with a racehorse, doesn't he, Dale?
He was a special horse too, and he was handled well. I mean, he was always in the right spots, and he just couldn't beat him over here. And Bango's nipping at his heels.
So give me one word to describe Bango's accomplishment, Dale, if he equals Reddy's Rocket later today.
Consistency. He's just constantly there, always showing up and always running big.
Yep. The big difference between Reddy's Rocket and Bango's been doing this, as Tim said, as not necessarily the favorite every time. He's done it in stakes competition. Reddy's Rocket, take nothing away from him. All of his wins came in either claiming or starter allowance races. So he wasn't at the same caliber of competition as Bango, but he is the current record holder. We'll see if Bango can equal that mark later today. Many of the experts in the mainstream sports media, when they discuss the NBA on talk shows across the country, have been focused on the possibility that LeBron James could decide to retire this year. So it got me thinking. Dale, give me one jockey and one trainer who, if they were to decide to hang it all up today and walk away, would be the equivalent of LeBron James ending his NBA career.
And that's easy for me, and I'm going to give you the team. Todd Pletcher and Johnny Velasquez. I mean, they've both been around a long time. They've been doing it at the highest level ever since they came into the game, and they're both still doing it very, very well, as we saw in the Preakness last week with Johnny. But I would say it would be like those two deciding right now with a lot of productivity in front of them, because we all know LeBron might not be what he was, but he's still one of the top 5 players in the NBA. It would be like one of those two guys walking away tomorrow.
I would say Dale Romans, but I don't think he can hit the jumper like LeBron. I don't think he can go right. But those were the two I was going to say. But I have backups. I always have backups. You look at, LeBron James was a 4-time NBA champion, and in sport, in horse racing, to be a champion is, it's the Eclipse Award, and Todd has won 8 of them. Since Todd has already been taken by Dale, I'm going to throw out Steve Asmussen because, he's at the height of his career. He's the all-time leading winner in wins. And even though he doesn't talk to me, I think I would put him in there as that is the guy that would remind me of if he were to retire, it would be LeBron James-ish. And
But
for the
LeBron
jock,
doesn't talk to you either.
I'm going to go with Javier Castellano. He's won the Eclipse Award 4 times, and he won his first Derby this year. He's, Johnny's number 1 in career earnings. Javi is number 2. So I would think that if Javier Castellano were to say, he was going to call it a career, I think he would be LeBron James-ish. I mean, he won 4 Eclipse Awards in his career, has won 4 Eclipse, and he's 45 years old. And, and some people say LeBron James could still play at the high level, and he proved it this year. Castellano has proved it this year. Johnny Velasquez keeps on proving it. And Todd Pletcher keeps proving it. Steve Asmussen keeps proving it. These guys could keep going. And if they were to retire, I'm sure there would be a lot of wide-eyed, open-mouthed people saying, I can't believe this, just like it will be if LeBron James were to call it quits. But I think those would be the guys for me.
I'll give you another one. How about Bill Mott?
He's so consistent.
Another good call. Yep.
I thought Bill Mott should have won the Eclipse Award last year. I think he's training at an exceptionally high level right now, and that's saying something for a guy that's had the success he's had.
Yes, it is.
Well, and the fact that he came out of the gate so quick winning the Pegasus and with Art Collector, and then he had Rocket Can and with the Fountain of Youth that he win, I believe, or was he the Holy Bull? Holy Bull, and and he's got 2 of the top older horses in Elite Power and Cody's Wish. I mean, Bill Mott is in line to have just a huge year. I mean, I don't know if it would be the same as when he had Cigar, but he's got a whole bunch of horses that can do a lot of good this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. He could absolutely be put on this list.
I was going to go with Erod Ortiz as my jockey, but
I think he's too young.
I think he's too young. I agree. He would be more the equivalent of, remember when Barry Sanders decided to retire from the NFL, and he went out, at the height of his powers, really. He was at his peak, and he said, okay, I'm done. I think that would be probably the better comparison if Erod were to say,
Jimmy
I'm
Brown
done.
when he retired.
Yeah.
Sandy Koufax. He retired young.
Yep. Guys like that.
I'm playing the history lesson here, Dale.
Yeah, I'm liking it. Keep going.
Yeah. Well,
I told you, I don't know if you heard me when you were talking. I said Asmussen and LeBron both have something in common. Neither one of them talk to you.
Well, better chance of getting LeBron to talk to Timmy, or better chance of getting Steve to talk to Timmy?
I think we got a better shot with LeBron.
Yeah, probably.
All right. Well, I know somebody who will talk to Tim Wilkin. That is our good friend Nick Zito. Let's say hello to Nick as we play a couple rounds of right or wrong.
Yeah, right or wrong. Am I right? What do you think? Right or wrong?
Okay, 2 topics for you here, guys. Let's kick it off with 5-year-old Defunded, who added another Grade 1 win to his resume on Memorial Day when he took the field wire-to-wire in the Hollywood Gold Cup at Santa Anita. He is now paired up back-to-back graded stakes wins and has finished on the board in all 4 starts this year. So, Defunded should be considered the best older horse in the country. Is that right or wrong?
Yeah, right or wrong. Am I right?
Tim?
I'm going to say wrong on this one. Defunded is a nice horse. There's no doubt about that. He's shown multi-dimensions, going gate to wire, and he's also been able to rate. But I'm still not sold that he's the best older horse in training. And, let's face it, the older horse division is not a stalwart division right now. I mean, the top 2, if you go by the NTRA poll, which I'm a voter on, the top 2 horses, some people would say are the sprinters, Elite Power, Cody's Wish and Elite Power, even though Cody's Wish is, he won the dirt mile at 2 turns last year, and he's being aimed for the Met Mile on Belmont Stakes Day. Defunded, when he won the Hollywood Gold Cup, I mean, the horses that finished behind him were certainly nothing that's going to really get the blood pumping. I mean, Country Grammar, who finished 4th, I believe, I don't think he's the same horse that he was. And the two horses that finished second and third, Paroli was 28-1 and Kiss Today Goodbye was like 35-1. I mean, those horses are not going to be mentioned in anybody's, top list of older horses. I think Defunded is a nice horse, and I think if he leaves California, which I think he'd have to do to become a part of the equation of the best older horse. And I don't even know if he's the best older horse in Bob Bafford's barn. I mean, Taiba, who really stunk it up out in the desert, is scheduled to come back in the Met Mile. Let's see what he does there. Again, Defunded is a nice horse, but I don't think there's any way that he's close to being one of the top older horses in the country right now. Who knows? Maybe at the end of the year I'll be saying something different.
Yeah, I'm going to say that Nick's right on this one this week, and we'll revisit. We could revisit this every week because that's a division that's going to keep changing the top level, I think, until we get into the later races and we find out what happens at the championship and Breeders' Cup. But for this week, we'll give it to Defunded, and I can't believe you went against Bafford, but we'll give it to him. I will give it to him this week.
Well, I was in that poll, that NTRA poll. Defunded, there was 29 people that voted on it this past week, and Defunded was named on 22 of the ballots with one first-place vote, and he had 5 second-place votes. I think I gave him a 9th-place vote. He's in the conversation, but I don't know how there's any way you can say that he'd be on the top right now. That's insane.
Dale, he went against Baffert, but he hedged himself a little bit, talking about Taiba in the Met Mile.
Bring up one from the past. I caught that.
Well, you guys, it's a tough crowd today. Yeah.
Well, how about this topic? I thought this was fun. 82 years ago, Whirlaway worked 1.25 miles in 2:02 and 2/5, 3 days before winning the Belmont Stakes and the Triple Crown. I say that approach would still work today. Dale, am I right or wrong?
What do you think? Right or wrong?
I'm going to say you're wrong. And if you tried it and it didn't work, the press would run you out of the game so fast you wouldn't get a second chance. Those were different animals back then, it seems like, and they worked and ran, and they'd run on Tuesday and run back on Saturday. Alan Jerkins, somebody used to have a prep race on Tuesdays before all the big ones, and he said that they would run and give them an easy race, and there was no saying 4th on Tuesday, 1st on Saturday. And that they would always drill them in between. They would run in between Triple Crown races and do it. But I say, even if you tried today and it would work, you'd never get much of a chance because it'd have to slip up one time and the press, like Tim, would crucify us.
That's absolutely right. You're going to work 1.25 miles, and then 3 days later run 1.5 miles. I mean, that is just... that goes back to the golden days when these horses were made of iron. And, back when Whirlaway ran in the Belmont, they must have known something too, because he only ran against 3 others in that race. And he won by 2.5 lengths, something like that. He was a different cat back then. And a lot of the horses were just, the iron horse. And today, it's a different breed. With the way they bred for speed, it's not bred for durability. And you're running 1.5 miles. There's no way you're going to run. You're going to work 1.25 miles three days before the race. That would be insane.
Now they write
That's the second time I used the word insane today. I'm sorry.
Yeah. They talk about you today if you blow one out 3/8 a couple of days out, and that used to be standard practice when I was coming up. But I'll tell you a quick Whirlaway story. There was an old hot walker that worked for my father, John Henry Thomas, and this was back in the early 80s, and he was in his 80s at the time. And he used to tell me a lot of stories. He was the last man to gallop Man of War, and he broke War Admiral, and which is all the same lineage, I guess. And then he said that they were just different horses back in those days, and he said you could train on them, you could gallop them, even as babies. They looked different and acted different. I learned more from John Henrik Thomas than probably anybody on the racetrack.
Wow. He must have had some great stories.
He had great stories, and he would just talk about the different training techniques. And he was a cantankerous little guy, and he'd always yell and complain about how easy we were on the horses and how we should be trained and how different things were back in the early 1900s.
And
but it was so right. To meet him. I was a lucky man to grow up in a barn like that.
Dale, did you ever try anything close to that whirl away 1.25 mile work? Did you ever try anything like that with any of your horses?
Yeah, I've worked several of them a mile, and then I had an old horse that I was trying some different stuff on it. I worked him 3/8, pulled him up, let him get his breath, and worked him another 3/8 in the same day, and it worked. He ended up winning a big race for me, and but it always comes back to basics and what we do normal, and under the scrutiny we're under today, it's very hard to step outside the box. I don't care who you are.
But you wouldn't have done it 3 days before a race, would you?
No, I never did. We used to blow them out a lot of times 3 days before a race. Even like in the most recent times, Big Brown, he would always work 1/8 of a mile the morning of the race. And they would take him out and let him blow out just 1/8 of a mile and pull him up. And Petro said it would always put him on his toes. You don't see things like that any place anymore, and that wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, Nick Zito going to be back with us again next week for a couple more rounds of right or wrong, but I want to get to one more topic before our West Point of the week, and this topic, another historic topic, if you will. Yesterday was the 76-year anniversary of one of the more incredible occurrences in racing history. After a 6-year layoff, 13-year-old Honey Cloud won the second race at Aqueduct, and his jockey, Clarence Minner, was coming off a decade-long layoff, having not ridden in 10 years. That has to be one, certainly high on the list of improbabilities in racing history. So, Tim, I'll come to you first. What are some of the most unlikely wins you can recall?
One that just, jumps off the page to me is the mighty Seabiscuit after he was injured. Well, actually, his jockey, Red Pollard, broke his leg in 1938, I think the year was. Then Seabiscuit, who was famous for winning the match race with War Admiral, he got hurt the next year. And then the two of them sort of convalesced on Charles Howard's farm, and they came back to win the Santa Anita Handicap in 1940, which was, documented well in the Seabiscuit movie. And, even though they had a couple races before that Santa Anita Handicap, but the fact that Pollard came back from a broken leg, and it was considered his career was just about it was over. He wasn't going to. They said he shouldn't ride again, and then the fact that Seabiscuit came back from his left front injury that he had, and they were able to win the Santa Anita Handicap was, it's stuff that legends are made of. And, another one that just sort of, I've remembered forever is that the exploits of 4-Star Dave, who won a race at Saratoga, every year from, I think it was 1987 to 94.
Yeah.
You don't see that anymore. And, that might not be improbable, but it might seem more impossible that were to happen. So those are the two that come to mind to me.
Yeah, well, Tim, you gave me the right one earlier. I thought you were going to use it. We'll say DeHaas off a year layoff to win the Breeders' Cup was a pretty impressive one. And another one I think of all the time is Mind That Bird in a 2-horse trailer from New Mexico. It comes in here and wins the Kentucky Derby. That was a pretty improbable one.
Those are fantastic choices.
Or what about the one last year, Rich Strike?
Well, Rich Strike, he was, I don't know if it was as good a story. He was right here in town. I only had to come over from Lexington. But I thought driving in a 2-horse, the 2-horse trailer thing is what got it for me. You know how many Derby horses show up on 2-horse trailers and leave out in 747s?
Yeah, so true. Great choices. By the way, today is also World Clubfoot Day, so we should wish a happy anniversary to the one and only Clubfoot Comet Assault, who on Thursday celebrated the 77-year anniversary of his Triple Crown sweep that happened June 1st, 1946. All right, about 2 minutes left in the show, so we've got to get to our West Point of the Week. Quick update on the showdown. The score remains Dale 45, Tim 44. Huge weekend coming up at Belmont. That is the final day of the showdown next Saturday. Everything on the line. We'll talk more about that on this program next week. But it is time to wrap up the show with our West Point of the Week, presented by West Point Thoroughbreds, and experience the lifestyle of thoroughbred racehorse ownership with the gold standard in racing partnerships for over 30 years. You know I'm talking about West Point Thoroughbreds. Text HORSE to 66866 to learn about ownership, message, and data rates may apply. Tim, go for it. What's the West Point of the Week, my friend?
Well, I'm going to leave most of the time for Dale because I think he has something to say. Main track at Saratoga opens on Wednesday, June 14th, which means that the Saratoga meet is right around the corner, which it is. Right as soon as the Belmont Stakes is over, the countdown is on. Opening day, July 13th, but the main track opens on June 14th.
Yeah, and I don't want to duck the elephant in the room and think everybody that we're going to cop out on this problem we're having at Churchill Downs right now with a rash of fatalities of horses. We have had 12 horses since the meet started that have died one way or another. And I just want everybody out there to know that in this game, the horse always comes first. And Churchill Downs, whether we agree or disagree, and I don't always agree with the things they're doing right now to try to make it better, but they're doing something, and believe me, they'll leave no stone unturned to try to figure out if there's a problem or if we just hit a cluster of bad luck right now. And this would be glad it's at Churchill, and I don't believe it's a racetrack. This has been one of the greatest racetracks for 150 years. It's set there, and that's what makes it so good. And I'm always feel better when I get my horses on this racetrack. And nobody's really seen any problems on the track, so I'm hoping it's a statistical anomaly that we'll see go away and give us a long time of safe racing. But it's being worked on and looked at, and it's in good hands.
Well, amen to that. Let's hope that gets straightened out quickly for all involved, no doubt about it. Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin, I ask, they answer. Guys, we'll do it all over again next week. Have a great weekend.
Thanks Mike. You too.
If you have a topic you want to hear Dale and Tim debate, email that topic to me, and I'll work it into the show for you. I Ask, They Answer is presented every week by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program and the College of Business. I'll be back with more. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Woodford Feed, where tradition merges with technology. Family owned since 1940 and providing exceptional customer service, Woodford Feed specializes in the highest quality feed, using only the finest ingredients to ensure optimal nutrition for your horses. In addition, Woodford Feed can help with all your farm needs, including field seed, fertilizer, and weed control. So whether your horse is sprinting around the racetrack or has a foal by her side, count on Woodford Feed to provide the quality nutrition necessary to perform at the highest level. Woodford Feed for Sales, Kentucky.
My battle buddies and I attended the NHL Stadium Series at Yankee Stadium. We had never been there before, and two of us had never seen a hockey game. Man, we had the time of our lives. It was great therapy. VetTix, we can't thank you enough.
Every empty seat at a concert, a game, motorsports, or a play is a missed opportunity to say thanks to a veteran and service member. We can help. We can give our veterans a special event where they too can create their own cherished memories. Find out how by visiting www.vettix.org. That's www.vettix.org. Find out how you can make a difference in a veteran's life.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Well, John, the stage is set for the final transaction.
That's right, Joe. Heather's moment has arrived, and you just hope all that training pays off.
Heather lays down her purchase, but Randy rings it up as slowly as he can.
He is a wily veteran.
It gives Heather's eyes the chance to wander.
Uh-oh.
Yep, she's looking at the cigarettes.
There's nothing good back there. Quit now, and in 5 years, your odds of getting certain cancers drop 50%.
Meanwhile, Randy's stone-faced. He's giving nothing away. He just stands there, wetting his cashier's finger on that sponge.
Heather toes the rubber.
Here we go. Heather's arm is in motion. But instead of pointing at the back wall, she just grabs the gum off the counter.
That's a slick move.
Heather back.
She is out of there. Even Randy tips his cap to Heather. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally wants you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Thursday evenings, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, is the Brisnet.com call-in show. It's your chance to call in and let the Horse Racing Radio Nation know what's on your mind. Call us at 888-966-HRRN. That's 888-966-4776. And discuss the topics you choose in the world of thoroughbred racing. The Brisnet.com call-in show on Sirius 216, XM 204, and streaming live at horseracingradio.net. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Well, the June issue of Blood Horse Magazine features 138 pages, including a recap of the 149th Kentucky Derby and a look at all of Mage's connections and a special Secretariat section focusing on Big Red. You can download a copy of this special June issue now from the Blood Horse Magazine tablet app via the App Store or Google Play, or subscribe today at bloodhorse.com/subscribe. You will not be disappointed. What a show. My thanks to everyone for taking time to make this show possible here this morning, including Dale and Tim, who you just heard in the previous segment, James Scully with this week's TwinSpires Triple Play, and Kurt Becker for that great story in his Stroll Through Racing History on Twice a Prince, runner-up in the 1973 Belmont Stakes. Had a chance to talk equine safety, talk about that situation at Churchill Downs, and talk about the racing coming up this weekend, not just at Churchill, but north of the border at Woodbine, with champion Moira returning to the races. What a show. If you missed any portion, head over to the website, horseracingradio.net. You can check out the podcast at your leisure. You can do that on every major podcast platform, and follow us on social media as well, at HRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, and on YouTube. For my producer, Lee Delapina, in our Lexington studio, for Chauncey handling all of our social media, I'm Mike Penna. Thanks for listening to the Equine Forum presented by TwinSpires. Go Steelers.